welcome back to Rewind Room, the podcast where we take a trip down memory lane. Now, this month is super special because we're delving back into the golden age of video rental stores. I'm Ramon, and I have with me my awesome co-host John.
How y'all doing, folks? It's good to be back. Good to be back here in recording with you again, and I'm really excited for today's topic, my friend.
Yeah, we have some good stuff, because today we're diving into the magic of those iconic spots where we spent hours browsing shelves, discovering hidden gems, and picking the perfect movie for the night. Or in my case, for that Friday night with pizza, friends, nice soda, and no worries. We're going to talk about these places and why they were more than just businesses, and why we share some of our favorite stories there from our life. And we're going to explore the impact they had on our lives as well. So grab your popcorn and let's rewind to a time when renting a movie was an experience.
It sure was, you know it. That's really the best part about the whole experience, you know. Just real quick, me and Ramona, we kind of grew up really in the last stages of the video store because I was born in 1997. I know you think you were born just a little bit before I was.
Yeah,
And so
96.
96, so you're born a year before I was then.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, you know, it's wild to think that we got to experience a good part of this for the younger parts of our lives, you know, and then we also got to see, you know, how the stores became extinct over time, and then now you got things like Netflix, Hulu, and all those kinds of services. So it's really interesting, and we're gonna really get into a lot of that. But first off, really quick, I just wanted to make a correction of something that I made a mistake on in my last episode. Our last episode that we did was on the resurgence of vinyl, VHS, and DVD, and in that I mentioned that record store chains were not really a big thing, and that most of the time people went to mom and pop stores for records, and that is correct. But my mother of all people, who was listening to the episode, actually corrected me. She grew up through a lot of that era, so she knew a lot. I made that mention, but actually, I did come to find out there are actually and definitely were lots of vinyl record chains out there. There were stores such as Sam Goody, which was often in malls, Coconuts, Circles, and
Coconuts.
one of the most interesting and probably most famous, Tower Records. So all of
Wow.
those companies were put together, and basically, when you have all three of those, you have some of the biggest record store chains in this country and in the world. So I just had to make that correction. I apologize for getting that wrong in the last episode. I'm just, you know, obviously I'm more in tune with the movie side of things. I'm more in tune with places like Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and places like that, to the point where I never really grew up in record stores. Most of my record experiences have either been thrift stores, thrift media stores like Bookman's or places like that, or garage sales. So I apologize about that, and I thank my mother for keeping me honest. And
No, that's beautiful. I love that.
absolutely, for sure. But with that, I think we can just go ahead and get right into what we want to talk about when it comes to video rental stores. So we're going to go ahead and start off, and we're just going to kind of look at the history of what video rental stores were really quick, and just kind of sum it up for the people who may have not experienced a video rental store, or have went into a video rental store, because I understand we have some listeners that have probably never stepped foot in a Blockbuster or a video place like this. So we're going to be doing a little bit of that, and then we will probably get into a lot more of our memories, because obviously that's what's going to be the majority of this episode, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really excited to do this episode with you, because obviously, Ramon, I think, as you know, that this is a big part of not just our lives but our friendship and bonding.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was spots like this that help foster friendships like ours. I mean,
Hmm.
I know that there are a lot of things we have in common, but places like Bookman's, which we've alluded to many, many times in this podcast, or even just going thrifting together, but then having it as a form of how should I say it, a part of the culture, at one point, like say in the 80s and 90s, where that's just what people did. They went to these places to share interests and to just be themselves. Of course, you and I are going to be are going
Oh
to be
yeah.
big fans of that, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. But with that, I will go ahead and get us started with the birth of the video rental store. Interestingly, video rental stores became a big thing around the late 70s and early 80s when we start seeing a lot more of home media start popping off. Because before that, really the only way you were able to watch movies were you either A, watched it at the theater when it came out in its original release. Secondly, waited until it came on television, hopefully that it had a television premiere on one of the big networks, which oftentimes most movies did, but it was just kind of one of those things you just wanted to make sure that it was on and whatnot. And
And prior to DVR, you had to tune in when it came on.
absolutely. You absolutely had to tune in when it came on for sure. And then lastly, sometimes the movie theaters would re-release movies. I've seen many trailers for the re-release of this movie or the re-release of that movie and just a lot of those different kinds of things. So just really interesting when it really comes to that. But in all honesty, probably the very first video store was a place called Video Station, which was opened by George Atkinson in 1977, December of that year, actually, to be precise. And the reason that this actually went through is because 20th Century Fox, now known as 20th Century Studios after its purchase by Disney, licensed 50 of their titles to Magnetic Video, and they licensed them so then they could be for sale to consumers. So that meant that people could purchase them. People could, go to a store and they could buy the movie and then own it and then watch it whenever they want to watch it. So that was the big part of that aesthetic. And so when this happened, Atkinson actually bought all of the titles that were in this list, and he bought them in both VHS and beta format. And
Whoa.
because of that, obviously at the time beta was a big thing as well. So having it available for people who prefer the both of the formats was a big win. And with that, he opened Video Station, and it spawned off the idea for people to not only make their own video stores, but even gave birth to the idea of franchising. And that's when we start getting places like West Coast Video, Rogers Video, Hollywood Video, and probably the most infamous Blockbuster Video. And then they basically took over the market at that time. And the thing is
Yeah,
is
they
that
did.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that during this time, a lot of people probably are wondering, what's the big push for why we want video rental stores? Why do we need this service? Because a lot of times people are saying, well, if you just want the movie, just go and buy it because that's what most people do today. Well, the thing is that while VHS was a cheaper format to make, it was not a cheap format to buy. In fact, the average videotape often would cost between 25 and $35, sometimes even going into the $40 range for a new VHS tape. Because at the time, VHS was considered a luxury because it was the dominant format and really the only way you were able to watch these kinds of movies. And oftentimes, too, people they wanted to be able to watch a movie, but also it was one of those things where it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this movie. Is this really gonna be the movie for me? And so the idea of renting a movie also gave the people the idea to where they can they can watch a movie, you know, and they can still be able to say, "Oh, I can watch it," and then they can return it. And then if it's not for them, you just don't have to pick it up again. And if you love it, then at that point you can go out and buy it. But the biggest draw, I think, for renting videotapes was the idea that you got to go and get a movie and watch it for a much cheaper price rather than having to spend, you know, a ton of money just to buy a bunch of videotapes at that time. And so
And
definitely one of those things.
I think that is also something that draws people to streaming as well when it
Sure.
comes to convenience. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't like the idea of committing to something without knowing if they like it or not.
Hmm.
And for streaming, you have the ability to watch the trailer and you have
Yeah.
the ability to see if it's something that you want to watch.
Sure.
Whereas you're walking in a Blockbuster or a mom and pop shop, and you're really just going off of the cover art
Yeah.
and the back little synopsis, and that's it.
Exactly. I mean, as time went on, obviously places like Blockbuster and a lot of mom and pop shops had TVs with movies
Yeah.
showing, and oftentimes, yeah, they would have trailers for different movies. They'd have different things like that. But at the same time, like you said, you know, it's not like today where you can, when you're browsing Netflix, you get like a little preview for each one
Hmm.
of the movies that you want to watch. With this, basically, you really had to make a decision based on the cover of the video, the description that's on the back. There's a couple pictures, and of course, the rating. And so,
Hmm.
with that, that's really kind of what was like, okay, this is cool, but and there was a lot of just different elements to that for sure
Exactly.
and whatnot. But definitely it was far more affordable to rent something than to buy it. So that's why I think, you know, there was such a big need and a draw for rental services is because, you know, in the 1980s, you know, it was just one of those times where, you you still had a lot of tangible things, but at the same time, you know, you also still had that option to where it's kind of like, do I really want to get this? Do I really want to own this? And of course, this is the era before streaming, so it really gave the people a lot of power in how they spent their
Hmm.
money. And so I think that was
Exactly. And
one of the
time too.
absolutely one of the biggest things. And then of course, in 1985, we get the launch of the biggest rental store that everybody knows the name of. Everybody knows, at least has heard history about it. I mean, even if you've never stepped in one of these stores, I'm sure you have heard the term Blockbuster Video in your lifetime.
If you
Obvious.
haven't, you are definitely born past 2010.
Oh, absolutely. Because even I know the jingle, and I never saw the old school Blockbuster. I know the iconic. I think I sang it a couple times, but I guess I'll do it for the
You
hell of
got
it.
to. You got to.
Blockbuster Video. Ow, what a difference. I think I said that right. That's how I remember saying it when I was young. Um,
How funny.
but yeah, that was the iconic Blockbuster jingle, and of course the commercial's iconic, family looking. There's people in the store, and just a lot of fun stuff. And then it cuts to the outside, and then that's when you get that iconic jingle. But
Yep.
Blockbuster basically was the first chain. Really, well, it wasn't the first chain. I think there were a couple others, but Blockbuster was like the first big chain. That was like the first video store that was in every of one of the 50 states. And then of course there also were around the world too. So
And we're
it
going to
was,
touch upon this a little bit later, but we're also going to discuss why Blockbuster sort of had a leg up compared to other
oh
chains.
yeah, for sure. They definitely had the monopoly
Yeah.
on the business. But basically Blockbuster Video was founded in 1985 by David Cook. And it was founded in Dallas, Texas, and it quickly became one of the biggest video rental store chains. Like literally every place you would go almost in this country, you would find a Blockbuster Video. Sometimes in the bigger cities, you would find multiple Blockbusters in different boroughs, in different areas, in different neighborhoods. It was that crazy. And it was just one of those things. I've only been in a Blockbuster once or twice in my lifetime, and that's because the video rentals chain.
Really?
Yeah, because my family were big on Hollywood Video, and I think it's because
Oh,
it was a
okay.
lot closer to us and whatnot. But I definitely stepped in a Blockbuster a couple of times, and it
Wow.
was it was an awesome experience. And we will definitely talk about our experiences going in these stores um
Yeah.
a little bit later. But it quickly became one of the biggest chains. Um, and basically, the way that that came about was Cook was in another line of business before he transformed into Blockbuster. And basically what happened was his wife was the one who wanted to get into the video business, and basically was like, hey, we've got something here because a lot of these stores are popping up allowing people to rent movies and videos and stuff like that. And so basically it came to a point where her husband David saw the potential and he capitalized on it. And it became basically now when people think of a video rental store, the first place that comes to your mind oftentimes is Blockbuster Video because it was
Hmm.
just that big of a giant. Blockbuster and Hollywood were the two biggest competitors when we think of the video rental stores. And oftentimes they were the ones who also kind of started the whole idea of video game rentals as well. Um,
Mm.
and whatnot. I mean, I'm sure there were others that were doing game rentals at the time, but they were the ones to really also have like a dedicated video game section to where it's like you can go over there, the kids can be browsing that while the parents are doing their thing and whatnot. So that was just really interesting. And yeah, it was just really surprising. But basically the way a stop at one of these stores would work is usually you were a member. You didn't have to always be a member because Blockbuster, they were usually pretty cool. But of course, the one question they'd ask is, do you have a membership? And obviously, even if you didn't, you still had to get a card to be able to take out movies and stuff. But if you became a member, you got some perks. You sometimes you'd get like a free rental every so often. You get discounts. You get maybe
Free popcorn.
free popcorn, free candies, snacks, and
Yeah.
whatnot. And it was just really cool. But yeah, and of course, that also allowed for um, just a lot, just a lot more fun memories, of course. But if you wanted to rent a tape, basically you'd go in and you'd browse for what you wanted. You had to hope that they had what you wanted, because if they didn't, it's not like today with Netflix where anyone can watch anything at a given time. If that movie was gone, you had to settle for something else. And
Oh,
that's what,
absolutely.
and I think that's what also led to the fun idea of, well, let's go browse the store and find something else that looks fun. And that's what led to people browsing the store for hours often is if you
Introducing people to new genres too.
exactly, yeah. Sometimes you had to take a chance on like, hey, I came in here to rent a drama, but hey, this comedy looks really funny. Let's go with a
Yeah.
comedy. Maybe I came in to rent Ghostbusters, but I ended up finding um
Ghost with
Ghost.
Patrick
Exactly.
Swayze and Demi
Yeah.
Moore.
Exactly. And the next thing you know, you're renting that movie and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, this was a good movie." And
I
then you
love
start
romance.
yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, right. Awakening in some people. But then basically the way it works is then you take your movies to the front and then you pay the rental fee. Rental fees for those movies were actually fairly cheap. Most of the time for Blockbuster, it was $1 a night. And so that would mean if you wanted, um, let's say they rent it to you for a week, it's about $7 for one tape. And then if you want to get like five of them, that's maybe like a $20 deal right there. And you can rent five movies for 20 when in reality it would cost you that much to purchase one. So that was the biggest convenience of that. And then you got to keep them. Some stores were a little bit more stricter. It was only a day that you got to keep it, but a lot of others were really chill and they were like, "Hey, you got a week, bring it back next week or bring it back at the end of the weekend." And you bring it back, and then if you were late, you got the late fees.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that as time passed,
Yep.
the cost to rent obviously went up because I definitely wish I lived in the era where
Yep.
you could rent for $1. That was not the case when I went to Blockbuster,
Nope.
Hollywood Video. But I know for a fact our parents probably paid 50 cents to $1 on the title.
Absolutely. No, it was definitely interesting. But yeah, like you mentioned, it definitely went up over time. And then it's just one of those things where $5-10 difference, but there's a little bit of a difference in there. I know for sure when I went in Hollywood Video, they were making the transition from video to DVD. And they had some videos still in the store for the people who still had VHS players and stuff and still preferred VHS as their method, but they started really pushing DVDs, and the cost to rent a DVD was like maybe $5 to $10, whereas a VHS tape was like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can really see how they were trying to push DVDs. But that's all I got for that section. Ramona, if you got anything else to add, by all means.
Not necessarily, but my section I will definitely be alluding to what you have said,
Oh, for sure.
given the fact that it's pretty straightforward when it comes to the history of it. Like John had mentioned, in the 80s, it was the rise of the VHS due to affordable VCRs
Hmm.
revolutionizing our movie consumption. It allowed us to watch movies at home, fueling the demand for rental services because we didn't all want to go to the theater experience. We just wanted to watch it on our couch or whatever. This shift gave the viewers greater control, and you know how much humans love having control,
No,
and
absolutely.
it curates your experience altogether. Which shifted into people saying, "Hey, you know what? We should make a business out of this."
Yeah.
And in the 80s and 90s, you could see like big names like Blockbuster dominating rental store markets. They had extensive selections, widespread locations, and they unfortunately outpaced smaller mom and pop shops. I mean, depending on how you look at it, but because of Blockbuster, I assume a lot of mom and pop shops had to close. And by offering that convenience of new releases and all these things, mom and pop shops actually did have the upper hand to Blockbuster because Jonathan didn't touch upon this. We were talking about
Hmm.
this prior to our filming, but it was a great point that he made, and I just want to say it again. And he mentioned that
Hmm.
Blockbuster's super family oriented, super family friendly,
Yes.
and that is definitely something that is more mainstream when it comes to selling and being able to be profitable. Strictly because mom and pop shops and independent stores really just they stuck to some mainstream titles, but they really wanted a personalized, curated experience, a
Yes.
community driven experience for independent films, for niche genres. And that's where you see sort of the rise in horror and thriller,
Hmm.
because you had these independent filmmakers not being able to do a theater release. So what do? They put it out on video. And how do they make money? The video stores, or at
Yep.
least that's how they were, or that's how things were.
Hmm.
And one of the most iconic features of the video rental store was the in store layout. Now, this is similar in mom and pop shops and in Blockbuster, big names like Hollywood, Hollywood Video, Rite Aid Video, all of those.
Yeah.
You had curated sections for movie lovers, and in that I mean you as a customer immersed yourself into the world of film by just walking through the doors. You had sections for new releases, which were often centerpieces for the rental shop, showcasing the latest popular titles and also things that they believe would collect things that they believed would create more of a pop culture difference in different ages. And also, these video stores also fostered, as Jonathan mentioned, a tangible source of entertainment.
Yeah.
One where we could have anticipation and discovery just by walking through, a deeper connection to films, one sparking and evoking curiosity, and then sometimes even just taking us out of our day to day lives. And this is more on the emotional sense of why we would go to these video rental stores. So, another curated experience that you got when it came to rental stores, something that was monumental and something that not a lot of people know about, is that depending regionally where you live, you had a different experience at rental stores, at rental shops, video rental shops specifically, because we live in the Southwest. It was divided into two, and we're in the United States, so we have West Coast and East Coast, and each region had its different intake of media. For example, on the West Coast we had a Tower Video, and on the East Coast we had Rite Aid Video. So those were the two chains that were dominating both of the sides regionally. But
Sure.
depending on where you went to go visit, you got a different experience. For example, if you went to the West Coast, the West had a lot more film movements, more indie movements. You have avant-garde movements. You
Yeah.
have just all these things that you don't see on the mainstream.
Yeah.
And they focused on indie and cult films, which is super cool. And then on the East Coast, a totally different curated experience. It was chains that did blockbuster mainstream films, which is also
Yeah.
cool because they're also catering to a specific community too.
Yeah.
And each region fostered this sense of culture that was different from the other. And it's so cool to see that just in the United States. I can't imagine how it is worldwide.
Yeah.
So every time you went to visit a rental store, the idea was that it's a 180 on the other side of the country because it's supposed to be personalized, it's supposed to be diverse, and then also just the way that we took media was very different culturally where you were, and then also just your race, how much money you made, things like that. The way we all took media was so different, and that's just something that you don't really hear about. How media sort of fostered this rivalry when it came to video rental stores.
No, absolutely. You nailed it pretty good. Definitely. I think that that's really cool to know that, that there was kind of a war going back and forth between both the East and the West Coast. And it seems like the West Coast had a lot more of those mom and pop shops. I mean, obviously we did have Blockbuster, we did have Hollywood, we did have all of those
Mm-hmm.
places, but it seems like a lot more people out here were more into the kind of niche scene, whereas the East Coast was very much into that refined, like family friendly kind of scene, especially during the time period, obviously. And obviously, I
Yeah.
can see why they would rely on those bigger chains because obviously, they deliver kind of what they want versus what we want was more kind of a personalized experience. And so I think that was really, really kind of cool as well.
And I know you have a lot more experience on this when it comes to like mom and pop shop video
Yeah.
stores.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to touch upon this on the memories, but it's
Oh
cool
sure.
to even think that, we on the West Coast sort of had the upper hand when it came to artistic expression. So
Oh
if you
sure.
wanted to release a cult film or if you wanted to release a film that would one day be considered a cult film, the place to do it would have been the West Coast.
Absolutely. I have to 100% agree. If you wanted, that's where a lot of independent creators come from is the West Coast. A lot of people
Absolutely.
who want to break into the business. Yeah, sure. Do we have Hollywood? Of course we do. But like, that's a whole nother place in itself. Whereas if you just wanted to make something, you could sell it, you can do it direct to video. And then, like you said, the video stores, often mom and pop shops would pick it up and then, people would start renting your movie. And the thing is, back then, people, especially horror fans, oftentimes look for those more indie niche kind of titles as well and
Exactly.
such. And so those stores really kind of catered to that whole thing. But that's really
Absolutely.
interesting, to see that how the birth of the video store really gave rise to not only just independent creators, but also gave rise to a whole new movement where people didn't have to go waste a whole ton of money just because they wanted to buy some tapes that they liked, but they actually were able to go to a store, rent it for a little bit, enjoy it, and then take it back. And then if they really wanted to buy it later, hey, guess what? There's a department store down the road selling a bunch of these. You can go buy it there afterwards, and then now it's yours.
Absolutely.
And then next thing you know, you're back renting something new the following week, and then something new
Yeah.
after that, and then it becomes this whole cycle. And that's really, I think, what also allowed people to just really love movies and film
Hmm.
was the idea that you could be exposed to so many genres for a cheap price versus if you had to buy them all, now you're spending hundreds of dollars on tapes. And if you don't like the tape, you're stuck with it, or you better hope that you got a good return policy.
No, absolutely. And then
For
even
sure.
as children, it allowed the movie going experience to just to be equitable for everybody.
Hmm.
Uh as a child, I mean, of course, you had to have an adult with you, but as a child, having the freedom to choose what you wanted to watch rather than relying solely on your parents purchasing things,
Mhm.
you had more freedom to to get to know the type of films that you liked, and you had this ability to mold yourself
Yeah.
in whatever way you wanted to through staff picks, the community that you were a part of,
Yeah.
and then just bonding with friends, and going back to school and being like, oh, I rented that movie last week and you should rent it this week, and oh yeah, I think
Hmm.
I'm gonna rent it this week because all my friends have watched it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, that was
it just community. That's really what it fostered.
it did. It built community, and that's really was the beautiful part about it. It really helped to build, community with people, community within your neighborhood, community within your town, and more importantly, community within the video and film world. And I think that's what I
Exactly.
think we need more of that now because I think now it's become very elitist, and a lot of people are, oh, I'm better this and this and this. Whereas back in the day, it was just I like movies, you like movies, let's go browse the video store together, And so
No, absolutely.
that was the big thing. It was really cool. But anyways, I think I would like to push this, and I think now we are ready to talk about the golden age of video rental stores because now we've talked about kind of the birth, but now we kind of want to look at what the golden age was like. Because let's be real, it really peaked from about the mid 80s to the late 90s. That's when the stores really were at their prime, both mom and pop and the big chains. So, with that in mind, I will go ahead and get us started on this topic. So, probably I would say the biggest peak for video rental stores, and I think you would agree with me, was definitely the mid 80s to about the late 90s. And the reason I say
Hmm.
that is because from about that time, that's when VHS became the dominant form of home media, and that's really just kind of when they started really kind of popping off. So really in the 90s, the experience wasn't really much different from the 80s. I mean, it was pretty much that same experience carried over, but the biggest thing that happened in the 90s was by the late 90s, we got DVDs. And
DVD.
yeah, exactly. And the thing that was awesome was that now you have two formats that you can go back and forth with because from about the 70s to the 80s, it was beta and VHS. And then from about the 80s to the late 90s, it was solely VHS. That's all you would find in
Mm,
a video store. And maybe some video games here and there, but mostly it was just videotapes. And then now you get to the 90s, the late 90s, and then DVD becomes this big thing. And now video stores are purchasing a lot of DVDs. Now, the convenient thing about DVD was it was a lot easier to stack. And I'm sure as many of you know who have DVDs, look at Ramona's collection behind her wall. Look at what I've got kind of right here. As you can see, you can get so many more DVDs into that space versus
hmm.
VHS tapes, which do take up a lot more wall space. So it allowed for, them to have a lot more copies of movies and a lot more they're able to have more inventory was the big thing. And but oftentimes a lot of these stores still kept VHS tapes because obviously they take into mind the transition's slow. Not everyone's going to go out the first day and buy a DVD player, and upgrade to this new format because VHS was our dominant form until I would say about 2003 really because and by that
Hmm.
time DVD had pretty much taken over the market and
Hmm.
and whatnot, but tapes were still around. um when we'd go into Blockbuster or Hollywood, there or even Video City, which was our local one back in the day. I'm going to touch more on that a little bit later, but you oftentimes had to go in and there was a section for VHS and then DVDs, and then I would say probably by 2005 it was solely DVDs, but it
Hmm.
was just one of those things. But um coming back to Blockbuster, Blockbuster, as we've mentioned, was really the biggest one. But to be honest with you, Ramona, you touched upon this, and I'm glad you actually brought this up because it's one of the big reasons Blockbuster dominated the video rental industry is because, as you mentioned, a lot of the times mom and pop were geared more toward community. They picked up the lesser known titles and they were more open to be a little experimental with the kinds of movies that they were carrying. But
Hmm.
Blockbuster was very family friendly, and the reason I bring that up is because Blockbuster was the place you could take the entire family. Yes, they had rated R movies. Yes, they had horror movies. Yes, they had areas you probably shouldn't be going into. Although they did not really have adult film sections, and that was part of their experience as well. And basically, it was one of those places you could take the whole family. And it was just one of those experiences. They had, a whole row of movies. They were the ones who started the whole candy and snacks up at the front, the popcorn buckets up at the front and all that. And then, of course, mom and pop stores, of course, would follow in that. And I'm sure there were probably some doing that as well, for the aesthetic and whatnot. But there was that, but also Blockbuster was also conveniently located because they had multiple stores. Like I remember
Oh yeah.
when I would go down to Phoenix to look at it, it seemed like almost every borough or neighborhood or little area there was a Blockbuster or a Hollywood Video in that area because they were catering to the specific neighborhoods. Because in a big city like that, there's many neighborhoods, there's many places, and it felt like almost
Yeah.
every neighborhood had a Blockbuster or Hollywood, which is what allowed them to franchise. Because not every one of those areas had a mom and pop. Sometimes you would have to drive miles to get to your nearest mom and pop, whereas
Hmm.
Blockbuster, just go right up the road and there's a Blockbuster or Hollywood waiting to give you movies.
On
And
that note,
yeah,
too, I felt like Blockbuster might have been, and because it was so mainstream, it might have been a little bit more affordable than the mom and pop shop. So
it
I
was.
feel like that pushed more people to go more mainstream than to supporting the small local business that,
Yeah.
needed their support.
Yeah, absolutely. Blockbuster was able to keep prices down because Blockbuster was really the Barnes and Noble of the video rental store era. It was the Borders and the Barnes and Noble of that because they were able to lower prices. They were franchised. They had, all these
Mm-hmm.
big things. Whereas the mom and pop stores often didn't have that. They had to charge a little bit more, understandably,
Yeah,
but you got a personalized experience with mom and pop, of course.
that's a great
And
point. Yeah.
exactly. And Blockbuster was spacious, it was big, and it was just an experience really to go into a Blockbuster with your family to go and rent a movie. And it was just really, really amazing. And the cultural, and this is one of the big things that often is brought up in nostalgia forums when people go back and look at these movies and stores, is oftentimes they look at and they see that a very popular trend that was probably started in the 80s, was massive in the 90s, and was a part of my childhood, was the Friday night Blockbuster experience. What is
Let's
that, you might ask?
go.
Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm about to tell you about it right now. Basically, this trend was um, on a Friday evening, if you were good, if you got your homework done, if you, well, I don't know how many schools gave homework on the weekends back in the day. I mean, if you're in high school, maybe, but like, you get what I'm saying. If you were good, you did your homework, did your chores, didn't do a whole lot of things. Sometimes you got rewarded with a special treat, and this was the treat. Friday, after everybody's out of school, everybody's home, the family would hop in the car, drive down to your local Blockbuster, local video store, Hollywood Video, whatever, pick out some movies to rent, maybe get a video game in there if you had a video game system, make a stop at Pizza Hut, get a pizza, maybe a stop at a Toys R Us or KB's Toys, again, if you were good. And then you got to go home and enjoy your weekend with all the fun you had, crowding around the TV with a slice of pizza in your hand, about to watch Robocop. How much better can you get on that, my friend?
It was the culture. It was a time where you had something to look forward to at the beginning of the week.
Yeah,
It would be a Monday and you'd think, okay, well, I have 5 days and then I can rent Aviator,
yeah.
or I have 5 days and I can check out that new Leonardo DiCaprio movie,
I got
whatever,
five.
you know?
I got 5 days until I can watch the new Star Wars. You know,
Exactly. And I mean, you
or
also had this anxiety too, okay, as a kid. You had this anxiety of like, is this movie going to be available when
yeah.
my mom picks me up and we go to the Blockbuster? There have been many times where I've gone and they're like, sorry, we just rented it out.
Yeah,
Person in line before you rented the last copy. You
I
have to come
know.
back next week.
Yeah, especially if they were new releases. Oh my God, you had to
Mm-hmm.
run.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you wanted to get there when the store opened.
Oh, don't even try to go on release dates for Harry
No,
Potter or Spider-Man. Good luck. Good luck.
exactly. Yeah, good luck. Absolutely, because you are not gonna win with that crowd for sure. I mean, there's
No.
people who line up for those movies. You thought the lines for the
Mhm.
books were crazy. You should have seen the lines when those movies were coming out at those stores.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember. We're again, we will be addressing a lot of this in our memory
Yeah.
section. But again, you can just see how jazzed we are. We just almost kind of want to sit here and be like, yes,
I know,
movie
right?
rentals.
I know. I'm sweating.
I know. I feel like I'm in line
Oh,
again to rent like Revenge of the Sith
oh my
or
gosh.
Spider-Man again or
Mhm.
Batman or something like that. It's just that's how cool
Mhm.
it feels. But that was the tradition. And the other big things too were just sometimes, like I said, you'd go in there and you'd have to browse, but sometimes you just went in there not knowing what you wanted, and you just walked the aisles for a few hours, and then next thing, oh, this looks interesting. I gotta watch that. This has a bus exploding on it. I gotta rent this. It's kind of like one of those things. You're like, oh my God, there's a skeleton on the front. Kind of thing and whatnot. It's just like,
Back when they actually tried. Back when they tried to make really amazing cover art.
yes, exactly. When they actually made good cover art, because that was a selling point. They had to sell it to you by just you looking at that cover. And that was the cool
Yep.
part about it. But it also just came with a lot of unique traditions and things people would do because Blockbuster had so much inventory, Blockbuster in Hollywood. But the mom and pop shops had the unique stuff, which also left you browsing sometimes because you're like, I've never heard of Wicker Man at Night, whatnot, or whatever the movie is
Yeah.
titled. I've never heard
Dragon
of
Wars.
Dragon Wars. I've never heard of Dragon Wars. That sounds kind of interesting. You're not gonna find that in a
Yeah.
Blockbuster and
No,
whatnot, but
no.
but sometimes you just had no idea what you wanted and you browse the store for hours. And sometimes you take your friends with you. Sometimes you run into your friends from school. Hey man, what's up? Oh dude, what's up, man? And then you're kind of like, hey mom, can I go chat with them? Okay, yeah, while I'm chatting with your buddy's mom, you can go play video games or do what you want, um, for a little bit, and then they get talking, and maybe they're looking for something else too, and you get to have the fun. If they had a video game section, you were playing video games. If they had a
Mhm.
if all they had were movies, you're going to your favorite movies. You might be sneaking into the horror section. Maybe you're even trying to get a peek behind the adults only curtain. I don't know. Who knows?
Let me tell you how often I would spend hours just sifting through that big bin they would have at like the end of the month where they put clearance DVDs
Oh
and
yeah.
VHSs that
Yes,
they want to get
yes.
rid of. And they would just be this huge bin that you could stick your entire arm in and then just grab a
Yeah.
random 2.99 DVD,
Yes.
previously owned
Yes.
sticker, all of that.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, it's amazing. It's crazy. For a second there, I thought you were gonna say, let me tell you the memories I have when I snuck into the adult section. I thought you were gonna say that for a second. You had me worried. You had me worried for a
No,
second.
I do have a story about that, but it's not at
Oh
a
boy.
chain. It's not at a chain.
Oh boy. Oh please. I hope you're gonna tell that story.
Oh, I will. I will. I'll
For
keep
sure.
it PG though. I'll keep it PG.
PG 13 is fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the majority of our listeners are mature enough to handle it. And if you're not, get out of here.
Get
But
out.
anyhow, but
Get
anyhow, but it just gave you the ultimate experience, with that whole thing. And probably one of the most special things too is that um video rental stores also allowed you to have a lot of fun because sometimes you just went in there, you knew what you wanted to rent, and you just walk in, grab what you wanted, and then you're out the door. That happened plenty of times with my parents. And oftentimes, I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, I was upset about it, but now, of course, I get it, where mom and dad's like, hey, I want to rent a movie, but I'm sorry, you can't rent anything this go around, because we don't have the money, it's not the time. Maybe you didn't get your stuff done, or maybe just got to lay the rules down. Like, hey, me and your dad are looking for something. Sorry, you can't get anything. You can look, but
Back
You
in the day
can't
too,
rent.
you also had like credits and you had
Yes.
limits for how
Mm-hmm.
many videos that you could take out.
Low
And
key, you did.
let's say you took out 3 movies on Saturday and your limit was 5, and
Yep.
then you returned them and then you wanted to rent 3 more Friday before the Saturday before that week ended,
Yeah.
you could only rent 2 of them, you
Absolutely.
know?
And that was the big thing about that is if you only rent two of them, then yeah, you really had to kind of think about it. And if you're a big family, you really had to kind of like slice and dice and be like, okay, folks, what are we voting on? What do we
Oh,
want?
exactly.
So yeah. But yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. But I think the biggest thing is that because it was at a reduced price, it allowed for both if you wanted just that one, $5, bring it back, throw it in. Of course, that went up over time, but that was the experience. But the other thing too, you could take out five movies, couple for the kids, couple for the family, one for mom and dad. Maybe you get a game in there as well, and then now you've got your whole weekend planned out.
Oh
And
yeah,
and that's all you
absolutely.
got to do. And the cool thing about video stores too was it wasn't like, a lot of places where they close on the weekends. They were open 24/7 most of the time except for maybe holidays.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it was cool. Not all of them. Obviously there were those that, would be closed on the weekends, and that's why people would want to go in Friday and get what they wanted, but oftentimes they would stay open late on weekends too because they knew people
Mm,
were coming in. I'm sure high school students and college students of the era would go travel to those stores late at night wanting a movie. And I mean, that's the equivalent now of binging Netflix at 1 or 2 in the morning. You'd go down to Blockbuster at maybe 11 at night or so, and then they close at midnight, and you can rent a quick movie and then you're out and then bring it back the following day or the following week. So,
yeah.
so
I
really, I
wish
think
I
the
was
video
born just
stores
a
gave them.
couple years before so that I
I
could
hear
experience
that.
that.
I hear
Because I was a
that for
kid,
sure.
so I was never out past 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I was
Sure.
never out
Same.
past
Yeah, yeah.
that. That would have
Me
been
too.
so cool.
That is really cool. But I think that's all I've got on that section. Obviously, Ramona, I know you got some stuff that you would like to add. So, by all means, take it away.
Yeah, so all I'm going to be talking about are just the transitions between VHS to DVD, which we touched upon last episode, and then how that sort of changed the game for Blockbuster and whatnot, and then how that introduced services like Netflix and
Yeah.
pay-per-view and rental
Hmm.
kiosks such as Redbox. So to start off, like I mentioned in last episode, VHS was more compact.
Oh, very much so.
It was a ritualistic aspect to watch a movie, and once DVD came about, everything was just the quality. It increased. You had better formats such as HD. You had different features such as interactive menus and special content, and that's something that mom and pop shop or excuse me video rental shops, specifically Blockbuster chains and mom and pop shops, started gearing towards because they started realizing, oh well, now this is becoming more mainstream,
Oh yeah.
and the versatility of the DVD just offered a better experience, a movie watching experience for people. So it makes sense that video rental stores obviously hopped on that bandwagon, and because of DVD's popularity, it offered a premium experience because you had faster load times. You didn't have to put the Be Kind rewind sticker on things that you were renting out.
Yeah.
You had superior sound and picture quality, so you wouldn't be going to the counter with a VHS saying, "Hey, it skips at minute 38." You don't have that with DVD for the most part.
Hmm.
So it allowed a little bit a leeway when it came to reusing and renting out media. It allowed for it to stay to excuse me. It allowed it to um survive longer, if that makes sense.
No, I hear you. Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
the
for
wear
sure.
of
I
VHS
get it.
versus a DVD, it was easier for the shop to be able to do the turnaround when it came to getting new
Absolutely.
inventory, things like that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Um, I can't imagine how hard it was to deal with constantly having to either rewind VHSs or deal with broken film or ripped film, or to deal
Mhm.
with graininess, to deal with sound that isn't synced,
Oh, sure.
dealing with all of those things that you don't really think about until you think about the transition from that to DVD. And I'm sure that that made selling a lot easier for these markets as well.
Yeah.
The only issue with that is that once DVD rentals became a part of the mainstream,
Yeah.
then companies like Netflix started just disrupting the video rental store
Yeah.
market by offering the convenience of the DVD online. And by
Yeah.
online, I mean you go online, you click on the DVD you want to rent, and it's in your mailbox a day later.
Yeah.
And you don't
Legit.
have to send it back for another week. So you don't have the $2 or the 2 day limit that a rental store has, and you also don't have the 5 disc limit that a rental store could have. You have more freedom, and also something that appealed to a lot of audiences was the fact that you didn't get late fees. And they
Yeah.
offered a subscription model. So it allowed the customers to curate their own schedule, their own viewing experience in the comfort of their own home. So, I mean,
Sure.
technically, you could enjoy these films by going to a rental store and then coming home. But Netflix cut out the middleman, i.e., the video rental shops. And that technically
Yeah.
paved the way for the eventual rise of streaming platforms.
Yep.
And, after that, it unfortunately for rental shops, it sort of went downhill for that.
It
Uh,
did.
the convenience of being able to rent multiple DVDs, having fixed monthly fees, um, all of that just helped with the gradual phasing out of physical storefronts.
Yeah.
And that phase out turned into new technologies such as pay-per-view services, Redbox. Redbox, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, actually the last Redbox was just, I think, picked up because they closed down about a couple months ago. And they were these red kiosks that you'd find at grocery stores, mall plazas,
S-
etc.
Some places up
Um,
here, there's still red boxes there, actually, funny enough.
really,
But
yeah,
I don't know
and
if
then
they're to rent. Sometimes I think they might be selling off some of their inventory because I know my one buddy, he was buying a lot of video games and stuff from the red box that they were getting rid of. And so he paid a set price and they're like, yep, yours to keep. He got the disc and he just went home with it. And yeah. So,
I
so
can
I,
absolutely see that
yep.
happening. I
But
think for the most part, Redbox is pretty much non-existent. Like they
yeah,
can't
it
make
is
any money
pretty
from
much
us.
now. But there are still some places that have them still occasionally.
Yeah, no, I've seen Redboxes. The only thing is that people are stealing from them now because they don't
Yeah.
take payment. So all you have to do is press a button, grab that DVD, and you don't ever have to return it.
Pretty much. I mean, well, that's
Um,
also part of their plan to get rid of their inventory as well, probably. So,
exactly,
yeah. But anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
exactly.
interrupt. Continue, my friend.
No, no, no. But basically, the advent of more convenient media accesses sort of paved the way for the decline of the video rental store, because services like Netflix and Redbox and even just pay-per-view watching on your cable service, it was 24/7. You know, you didn't have to say, oh, it's 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Blockbuster's about to close, or oh, it's 8 a.m. It's not open yet. You had the convenience of being able to view the media for the most part when it was convenient to you. And
Yep,
that's something that definitely disrupted the mainstream appeal to blockbusters and storefronts,
it did.
because the customer preference and the technology evolves, and we can't really help that. Um, it makes it more flexible. So it makes sense as to why, you know, we as a society went from going to a storefront to enjoy the experience. It makes sense that we transition from there to this sort of individualistic approach to taking an art.
Yeah.
You lock yourself in your room and you put on Netflix, and that's your movie going experience for the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Just it's crazy to think just how much this all has evolved, and it's kind of mind-boggling to think that, that there was a time when if you wanted to watch something, you physically had to get in your car, go down to a store, look for what you wanted, come back maybe about an hour later if because most of the time you got caught up looking at other stuff, let's be real,
Yeah.
and whatnot. So it was interesting, it was really interesting to kind of see that whole dynamic, and then now you don't even have to get off your couch. All you have to do is just press a couple buttons and that's it.
And how funny. I'm sure we sound like our parents back in the day when they would say, "Oh, well, when I wanted to find something, I had to go to the library to look it up, and now everyone can just go on AI chat or go on Google and find the answer." It's similar, something that we had to go through as kids, and then our parents when they were younger. That tradition, that routine that was established, something that we keep saying is tangible because it is. It's something that we look forward to and we can feel and touch and experience with our senses. It went from that to having all of this infinite access to, or having all of this access to infinite, media for self gratification.
Yeah.
It went from a journey to a click of a button.
It did. And that's, I think, the craziest part about it is, it's an aesthetic appeal, like you were mentioning, and really, it was wild, to think that, you know, um, that there was like I kind of said, I don't want to be too repetitive, but there was a time when there was a store that you had to visit, and now,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's convenient now to just the press of a button. You don't really have to do a whole lot to access Netflix or Hulu now. All you have to do is just turn your television on, navigate to the app, open it, and then just start browsing that way. And then
Yeah,
when you
the only issue is that you have to make sure that your subscription was paid the month that
That is
month.
true.
It's the only thing.
Well, that's why now they have things where it just charges your card monthly, so you don't even have to look at it.
Hmm.
And then now all you got to do is just quickly bam, 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 and the next thing you know, you're into it. And
That's
and
where they
and
get you though, because then
that's
you're
where
paying for like
exactly.
seven streaming services without even knowing.
Yep, that's where they get you. They hope that you'll forget, and then you'll just keep using it. And then next thing you look at your credit card statement, and you're like, "Holy crap, what just happened?"
Yeah, I haven't watched Paramount Plus in 4 years. Why am I still paying for it?
Exactly, exactly. It's
But
wild and whatnot.
that actually concludes my section, so I'll go ahead and give the soapbox off to you.
Awesome, my friend. That was really cool. And actually, what you were talking about segues perfectly into what I'm going to talk about. And guys, I know you probably be hearing how hype I am this entire episode. Please forgive me. I'm just so excited right now. So if I'm a little loud for you guys, I apologize. But I'm just having so much fun. I know you are too, Ramona. So we're
Heck
both really hyped
yeah.
this episode.
Yeah, we want
Um,
to apologize for just any inconveniences we caused you guys throughout the day, whether it be just us being super happy about it, but also I don't want to
no,
apologize for that.
no, I don't either. I just want to apologize if I blow someone's eardrum out, but I'm not apologizing for how enthusiastic I am about this. So,
Okay, that's
that
fair.
being said, that being said, let's get into the last part, the decline and fall. And
Dun dun dun.
this is definitely gonna be the saddest part for me. But
Yeah, get your tissues
basically,
out, everyone.
yep, exactly. Gotta get your tissues and whatnot. But basically, what happened was around the 2000s, DVDs. Aside from the fact that people still like to rent them and still like that experience, DVDs were often cheaper now to buy rather than to rent. And that a lot of it was because DVDs were a lot cheaper to manufacture than VHS tapes. VHS was cheaper for its time, but now DVD is cheaper for the modern time. So the thing is that in the long run, DVDs were a lot cheaper to purchase rather than to rent. So now you could go and look through a lot of stuff you wanted. And by this time, so many movies had come out by this point. Keep in mind that a lot of those movies you rented on VHS, you could just go buy now on DVD and for a
Hmm.
lot cheaper price than if you were to buy that on a VHS tape. So that was the other big draw when it came to that whole thing. But that kind of cut the need for rental stores. But another, I think the biggest um, contributing factor was convenience.
Hmm.
And that was the biggest thing that the market wanted to do is It seems even back in the day with Blockbuster mom and pop stores, they were always still trying to strive for convenience. How can we make it more convenient for the people? And then eventually it just got to a point where it's how can we be convenient and cut out the store entirely? And
Mm,
so I think that was the biggest contributing factor to that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, with the rise of Netflix, a mail-in DVD service, which I always found weird. You can call me what you want to do. I mean, I did it. I had Netflix, but I always found it weird that you're gonna mail a DVD, through the mail, and then the postman's gonna bring you another one the following day or week or whatnot is probably one of the but I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it, I appreciated it, and it's nostalgic to me even to this day because Netflix doesn't even offer that service anymore. It's all streaming now. And
yeah.
so definitely a lot of that kind of stuff. And so they realized, we can just form a streaming side to this whole thing, and and so they've even cut that out of their regimen and whatnot. But then that led to the rise of streaming, and that's when you get stuff now like Hulu, Prime, Max, Tubi, and a lot of these other services, Paramount Plus, Peacock, and you have all of these different services now that are owned by different companies and have different content on them. And a lot of them now even have their own original shows and they have their own studios. Now it's to the point where it's like, now you're not just renting from Netflix, now they're making the product you're watching. And the same with Hulu and all these other companies. And it's just wild to think about. And of course, I think Blu-ray also played a small role in that. But the thing is, a lot of stores
Mhm.
also did adapt and they did get Blu-rays. I remember
Yeah.
seeing Blu-rays at Blockbusters, at
Mhm.
Hollywoods. Even mom and pop stores were getting up on the Blu-rays, and
Now
stuff.
they were more expensive though, so I
Oh,
never
they
touched
were.
those. They were like $3 or $4 more expensive, so I
Oh,
just
yes.
couldn't. I
Yeah, yeah.
couldn't.
You usually now, if you wanted a Blu-ray, you're talking $10. So now you're going 10, 20, 30,
Yeah,
for three
and that
for three
that stacks
Blu-rays.
up.
Yeah, exactly. It really stacks up.
You know.
Excuse me,
No,
a little
those are some really
dehydrated.
great. I'm hydrating right here too. I have my
Awesome.
little
Oh, good, good.
hydrator and some
Hey,
food.
people out there, make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you're drinking your water because it's very important. I feel like
Exactly.
a lot of people are not drinking their water. So I want to take this moment. Make sure you are drinking your water.
Drink your
So,
water, people. Come on.
yes, drink your water, people. Come on.
Let's take
Absolutely.
care of ourselves.
Take care of ourselves. Absolutely. Hydrate.
Mm,
Make
yeah,
sure
exactly.
you do that. That's how I can get hyped sometimes is just being hydrated, and
Exactly.
whatnot. But of course, a lot of
Yeah,
it's
cold
just the
water.
topic as well that we're talking about
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
whatnot.
think it's mostly that, but
Oh yeah, for
hydrating is
sure.
very popular.
Absolutely. But
uh,
to get back to what I was saying, basically, the thing is that, Blu-ray is really the thing that's keeping the physical media war going. Because Blu-ray is still around to this day. Movies are still coming out on Blu-ray. Now you got 4K Blu-ray. But a
hmm
lot of it, of course, is just it's just the market trying to push them out. Obviously it's not obsolete. There's still people who want Blu-rays. They're going out of their way to make sure they can buy them. But a lot of stores like department stores, a lot of places that sold them are starting to cut back on them because they're just really trying to push the digital market. So that's
Yeah.
the unfortunate part of that. um but looking at Blockbuster's downfall, the biggest thing that happened with them is they made a lot of mistakes. And unlike the mom and pop
Mm,
stores, which became just a product of people moving on, Blockbuster actually did screw up in a couple areas, and I'm going to go over those real quick. So, Netflix enters the game. Blockbuster has a hard time keeping up, but they tried. They formed their own mail-in DVD service, and they actually made
I
it to
do
where
remember that.
they actually did make it to where saying like, if you want us to mail it to you, we'll mail it to you, and then if you want to return it, just go down to the store and you can drop it off in the box, and you won't be counted as having it late or anything. And
hmm
in they also, in 2005 they got rid of their late fees. There's an iconic commercial called "It's Over" where people are going down the road and they're like, "No more late fees, no more
hmm
late fees." And then they drop the banner, "No more late fees." And then they're like, "It's over." And everyone's crying. They're going crazy. They're like, "Yes." And of course, that's because Netflix did that. And then Blockbuster's like, "We got to keep up. We have to get rid of our late fees as well."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that basically happened. And They also, the problem was they didn't really innovate as much as Netflix did, and they really had a hard time keeping up with the market, and they really they failed to really adapt to the newer generation and the newer time. Because I think had they had been willing to make those adaptations, they may have lived a little longer. I'm not saying they would have been here to this day, but they might have been here just a little bit longer.
Are you referring to Netflix's mail-in order service, or are you talking about when it started when streaming started?
It's
Netflix
a little bit
streaming.
of both, honestly.
A little bit of both.
So
Okay.
the mail-in DVD service era was Blockbuster versus Netflix. When the
Okay.
streaming era happened, that just drove them even deeper, is really what happened. Because the grave
Gotcha.
had already been
Okay.
dug, but they just got
I see.
pushed deeper into it. And I know that's a morbid way to put it, and I'm sorry about that, but
It's
that's
the
the
truth.
it's the truth exactly. And so they just no longer had the monopoly on the business. And then in 2014, they declared bankruptcy and shut down.
Wow.
And because again, they really kind of failed where to adapt. And I think had they adapted, they would have lived longer. I mean, can you imagine if Blockbuster not only became a streaming service, but had their own studio, Blockbuster Studios? That would be insane.
I think the rise and fall of Blockbuster just had to do with not connecting with the times,
Oh, it
and also
absolutely
just
did.
assuming that people don't want to be convenienced.
Yeah,
People want to be convenienced. Hence the reason why, by with a push of a button on my phone, I can have my groceries at my door in 20 minutes. Not
absolutely.
that long, but but
Yeah,
you have to also factor in the fact that people value their time, they value their energy, and they value how they spend it and who they spend it with. And
absolutely.
if you can save a half an hour by not going to a store and just clicking what you want to watch, people are going to do it. And
Yeah,
Blockbuster didn't,
they didn't
they
do
didn't
that.
hang on. Unfortunately, they what they could have done was taken their selection, digitized it, and offered a more affordable version of Netflix or something like
Absolutely.
that, or a
I think
niche version of
I think they
Netflix.
thought about that, but they just never capitalized on it,
I know
and
that's
that's
the
the
thing.
problem, and then obviously not long after that, the mom and pop stores kind of, well, actually mom and pop were kind of going out the door a little bit more, but there were some that
Yeah.
really hung on because I remember Hollywood Video closed before
Yeah.
Video City did here in
Really?
Flag. Yeah. And a lot of it's
Wow.
because the community kept Video City going, but then obviously, they just kind of lost their audience due to, of course, streaming and Netflix and a lot of
Yeah.
those services. But to tell you the truth, the biggest difference was the mom and pop stores mostly lost their audience. Blockbuster failed to adapt to its audience. So that was the biggest,
That's a
I
good
think,
point.
difference between how they both fell. Because if Blockbuster had adapted, I could have seen them living on a little bit longer. I think
Yeah.
eventually they would have went under just because of the service that they started with and their
Well,
whole
look at
overall
Netflix. It's
goal.
going under.
Well, yeah,
Netflix
because
is pretty much, I mean, Netflix is doing fine.
yeah,
Trust me,
they're
guys.
doing
They're
good.
making enough money. But
Yeah.
now everyone and their mother has their own streaming platform. So obviously Netflix has to keep up.
Yeah, they do. And so that's just kind of one of the things. And now you got a competition from all these other streaming
Hmm.
networks, and now they're all studios as well. So now they're
Yeah.
making their own content. So now they're
Yep.
eliminating the need to license or get it from other people. I mean, obviously they do because, Netflix obviously has a lot of movies that, are not their own content and a lot of
Hmm.
stuff like that. But, some of them partner with them, like Max is partnered with Time Warner, so that's how they got all the Warner Brothers collection.
Oh,
Hulu's
wow.
partnered with FX and Fox, and that's how they got all
That's
their
true.
stuff. And
Hmm.
a lot of those other ones, well, Fox, and then of course Disney. That's the other thing too,
Hmm.
because Fox is now owned by Disney, so now they're technically partnered with Disney. So,
Hmm.
you got all these different companies working with another, and then that's how they're doing that. Whereas back in the day, you did have to get that licensing to make sure you could carry this company store movies in your store,
Yeah.
and it's just wild to see that. But one thing yeah, that was interesting is that a lot of these places, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, in the memories, but they sold off a lot of their stuff. I remember,
Yeah.
it was wild,
Yeah.
but it was crazy. But that's all I
Massive
got.
sales.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all I got for the history. So Ramona, if you want to talk about your section, by all means, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about the nostalgia aspect and the legacy that was left behind because of what had happened from the
Yeah,
80s to the early 2000s and how
absolutely.
we took in media. As digital streaming started dominating, a few video rental stores thrived by specifically catering to nostalgia and niche collectible media forms. They thought, okay, you know what, people aren't coming to my mom and pop shop to rent the newest mainstream video, so maybe they'll come for those underground things,
Yeah.
for those cult classics.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of them survived because of that tactile nostalgic experience
Hmm.
that you couldn't get at a Blockbuster. And as video chains unfortunately started to decline, more independent stores started realizing, oh, we're going to start doing, what the OG mom and pops are doing by catering to these markets.
Yeah.
And they're embracing different types of media formats, such as VHS tapes again,
Yeah.
because once DVDs start coming in, then you have that community who's like, no, 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 we still want VHS as a part of our lives. So they're going to these places to either revive or continue on the legacy of said formats. And they also got smart because they realized that community is everything. And I think that's something that we also touched upon when it came to the downfall of Blockbuster, is
Sure.
that it was very mainstream, and that's the best way to put it, because mom
Mhm.
and pop shops were just so individualized. Like every mom and pop shop had its own theme, or it had
Yeah.
its own vibe, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And many of them hosted retro screenings. They focused on certain independent films and filmmakers.
Yeah.
They created this like personalized experience again that Blockbuster started, but then
Yeah.
became more surface level. So they
Oh, absolutely.
definitely
Yeah.
took it upon themselves to also revitalize their inventory by adding collectibles and memorabilia that you could also buy, which
Sure.
Blockbuster started doing. Um, I think maybe 5 or 10 years before they started declining. You could buy posters there, you could buy plushies, you could buy different types of memorabilia there.
Oh, I
Uh,
remember this. Yeah.
yeah, and then the mom and pop shops are actually the ones who
They kind of
really,
started that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, don't quote me on that, but it feels like it. It feels like that's the case.
To an extent, yeah. I could
Yeah, and
definitely see
then
that.
and then you had not only people enjoying these community things, and this is not necessarily on the downfall, but also feeling nostalgia for it, because even though it's slowly and steadily declining, you as someone who's partaking in this phenomenon, this cultural phenomenon, you can't help but take it in and realize, oh, we might not have this.
Yeah.
And it's things like movies and music that allude to video rental stores, that sort of give people who didn't live that life, or who didn't experience it, or who weren't born in that time, sort of a taste.
Mhm.
Films such as Clerks or Empire
Yes.
Records or Stranger Things, even, or
Oh, yes.
music videos like Video Killed the Radio Star. They all
Mhm.
celebrate nostalgia, community, and the experiences
Absolutely.
tied together in the video rental store. Something that was a cultural significance, at least in the United States, the way that I see it.
Hmm.
It was a huge thing. And you have these movies and authors and directors and whatnot paying homage to them, and tribute, and paying tribute,
Yeah.
as they're not only experiencing it firsthand, but as they're also observing the industry shift.
Oh, yeah.
um and a lot of those things, like, say, one of the biggest reasons why I feel like shows are starting to do 80s versions, like, say, a
Yeah.
new Netflix show will be like 80s themed, or
Yep.
better yet, Stranger Things is literally nostalgia when it comes
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
geekdom, really. They
Hmm.
has Dungeons and Dragons, it has OG music, it has OG films, things like that, all these illusions. Why? Because we love nostalgia, and
Yeah.
they're trying to give us a piece of what they grew up on.
Absolutely.
um and then on my last note here,
Mhm.
uh just discussing on how it's changed over time. It went from, and we've talked about this many times, it went from this communal experience to and social outing to digital convenience,
Hmm.
to a press of a button. It went from visiting rental stores, browsing aisles, reading cover art, engaging with staff, turning over movie rentals and reading the 5 paragraph synopsis or whatever.
Yeah.
It turned all this anticipation, this expectation, and excitement into click,
Yes.
nah, click, nah, click. That's how much it changed, and it is so sad to
Mhm.
think how monotonous the idea of the movie going experience has turned into.
Is
And
wild.
the entire process being digitized, it offers obviously access to vast libraries and the click of a button.
Hmm.
You don't need to browse the stores. You don't even need to get into your car. But
Yeah.
it also affected every facet of the media industry. It affected how
Hmm.
actors and directors and everyone in the production got paid. It
Yeah.
affected local movie theaters, independent movie theaters, and
Hmm.
moreover, it affected video stores because
Yes.
of that. So the advent of streaming actually killed off all of these little things that we overlooked as consumers,
Low
but
key, it
that
did.
people who are in the industry, it hit them hard. And that's something that we don't really think about or talk about
No, for
when
real.
we're discussing nostalgia. We talk about all these great things, and sure, we'll sometimes bash streaming. I mean, streaming isn't perfect. Streaming is great. It's not perfect,
Oh
but
yeah.
we also have to talk about how things were negatively impacted because of said convenience.
Yes.
Um, and even though I'm ending my section on a more uh, a down note, I want to say that it's people like us that are also revitalizing the need for these hubs, and also
Yes.
um, reinvigorating and relighting the fire inside of people to remind them just how nice times were in the past, that we don't have to always be gratified instantly, and we don't always
Yes.
have to be convenience. That moments like these, or like things that we cherished in childhood, are the precursors to why we live now. Now we can't regress. I mean, one
Yeah.
day Netflix might be obsolete, and what's going to be the next thing? You know,
Absolutely.
the hope is that it sort of trails back, and we become a community again as
Hmm.
viewers. It becomes an experience. That's the hope.
Absolutely. I agree with every point you made. And, I think it's really important to kind of look into that lens. And even though this chapter ends on a dismal note, the fact of the matter is that, you know, while there may not be a vast need for these stores anymore, I think there's definitely still a communal need. And I
100%.
think eventually, I think that's why some video stores are still surviving despite the fact that, it's been taken down, because it's the communities that keep them going. It's the people that keep them going. There's people who still go into them. I think that's why there's still, one last Blockbuster still around, to this day, which we will be talking about very soon. But it's just wild, to think about that whole little thing. And the fact of the matter is that, you realize that, how awesome it was, and then it's gone. But then you realize that, you got to move on with the times, but at the same time, you can keep a little bit of the past with you. And I think that's what video stores really kind of allow for, and I think just the tangible idea of it is what made it so big as well. So,
Absolutely. I mean, you still see shops that sell DVDs. I mean, we go to Bookman's all the time.
oh
It's
yeah,
for those of you who don't know, obviously you guys have not been listening to our podcast because we've been alluding to it so many times.
we've talked
But
about so many times. Yeah.
it's an entertainment store based in Arizona. It's a chain in Arizona where they sell books, music, movies, everything entertainment under the sun. And,
Absolutely.
that's a place for people like us to come and gather. The only difference is, because you're buying, you don't really have a need to come back until you want to buy something else.
Exactly.
Whereas the process of renting forced you to come back. It
Yes.
forced you to re-immerse yourself in the experience of the video rental store. It's not like you could rent a movie and then just never step foot back into it. You had to return it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. You had to return it, and then it caught your eye because you had to go in there and look, and next thing you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're picking something else
Exactly.
out. So that's how they got you. It was really cool. It was really
Hmm.
awesome. But no, that was really good. I think we got a lot nailed out of the way, and I think we're ready to move on to the next section.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
So before we get into the break for our fun facts and trivia sections, one of my favorite sections
Oh
of our
yeah.
podcast, I did want to mention I finally got the answers to the question of a century that you mentioned your friend asked you back in episode 2.
Oh
And
yeah.
for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, John received a really great question
Probably
that
the best
stumped
question
me.
we've had yet.
Yeah. And the question was, what trilogy do we prefer? Batman, the Christopher Nolan trilogy, or Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi uh, trilogy?
Yeah.
And the audience has spoken. 43% of you think the Batman trilogy is better than the Sam Raimi.
Mhm.
So that means Spider-Man won.
Yeah.
57% of people think that that trilogy affected them more positively than the Nolan trilogy, specifically people in our age group who grew up on them. And
Yes.
as many of you know, we discussed this over episode 2 about how monumental and really just how transformative Spider-Man was to not only the movie industry but to comic book movie lovers and comic book lovers themselves. I have a quote from a friend of mine. A shout out to Danny. Uh,
Hey,
love
shout
you,
out
Dan,
Danny.
man. Sending love to Virginia over here. But he said, I think at the time Batman was the better trilogy, which I agree.
Sure.
But in retrospect, given the impact both of them had, Spider-Man takes it, and I agree.
Yeah, I
And I
agree too.
responded to him by saying that Batman was a cinematic experience.
Hmm.
Nolan's Batman was a cinematic experience,
Oh, it was.
and the Spider-Man trilogy was an emotional experience and an emotional. Uh, how could I say it? Groundbreaking and
Yeah,
radical moment
was.
for a lot of young kids, specifically young children who liked comic books and superheroes. Nolan's film was exactly that. It was a film,
Mhm.
and Spider-Man was the movie experience. Now,
Yes.
I'm wondering, what did you expect the results to be?
Oh man. I kind of figured Spider-Man would win just because of the fact that like I look at a lot of polls now and a lot of people definitely say Spider-Man when comparing the two, but often if you just ask them outright, they'll say Batman most of the time.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because you don't give them something to compare it with. And so the thing is that both were cinematic in their own rights. Both were very independent for their own times because you have to figure they weren't part of like a cinematic universe. These were just filmmakers making stories about these characters. I mean, Spider-Man, when that came out in 2002, that was really the first time we saw an actual superhero made for all audiences. Because before that, of course, we had Blade, we had a few others before that, and they were geared mostly toward adults. But Spider-Man was really the first one that was adapted that was PG-13. Anyone could go watch it, you know. Um,
Without a doubt, I think that point is one of the biggest reasons
yeah,
why. And I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah, exactly, and whatnot. Whereas when Batman Begins came out in 2005, that was a big turning point too, because Batman's a huge franchise. In fact, I actually just had the pleasure of watching Batman Begins again in the cinema just last week, and in a couple weeks I'm going to see Dark Knight. So I'm really excited for that and whatnot. But Nolan's films are so cinematic in their own right. He's a cinematic filmmaker. That's who he is,
He
you
is,
know.
really
Whereas
is.
Sam Raimi starts off as a horror guy, and next thing he's made one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. And they were so just kind of very similar, but again, like you say, they're both cinematic in their own right. But Spider-Man definitely was the experience, and Christopher Nolan was the cinematic experience. But I think also
Hmm.
too, while people obviously loved Spider-Man, I think obviously as we know that there was that whole era of, they're just these movies, they're not comic accurate, they're not this, they're not that. People were
Oh yeah.
nitpicking for the
Oh yeah.
longest time at those little things. Even though they loved the movies, they were nitpicking. Christopher Nolan's Batman movies were accepted right out of the gate, I feel like. It's like, you have Batman Begins. Oh, this is a great origin story. Dark Knight, one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. Some even rank it the greatest superhero movie of all time.
Mm, mm.
So innovative, so crazy. Of course, Heath Ledger. We could
Oh
make a whole
yeah.
episode about just Heath Ledger's acting performance.
Absolutely.
And then
Great
Rises is
ensemble. Great
yeah,
ensemble. You mean you have Michael Caine, you have Heath Ledger, as you were saying, you have Gary
Christian Bale.
Oldman, Christian Bale. Yeah, you
Yeah,
have
Gary Oldman.
yeah, I mentioned Gary Oldman and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
Gyllenhaal,
Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Maggie,
That's
yeah,
for this. That
Maggie.
was for Dark Knight. First movie, it was Katie Holmes playing Rachel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about Dark Knight
Okay,
because we
got it,
had
got it, got
who
it.
else did we have?
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Free. Oh my gosh, is Lucius Fox. Yep, yep, Morgan Freeman. That's so funny. So, and then
Yeah.
who was the actor who played Two-Face?
Oh, Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart. That's his name.
I don't
Okay,
see a
okay,
lot of
there
him
we
anymore.
go.
I don't know what's happened with Aaron Eckhart, but he's a great actor. I mean,
He's a fantastic actor.
yeah,
Fantastic
especially for
actor.
playing Two-Face the way Nolan kind of envisioned that whole thing.
Yeah,
But
and then in the
that's
first movie, you had who else did you have? You had Liam Neeson, which was insane.
yeah,
Third
Liam
movie, you
Neeson.
had Tom Hardy.
And you also had Marion
Oh, Killian
Cotillard in the third
Murphy.
one. Killian
Oh,
Murphy.
okay.
Well, I mean,
Anne
Killian
Hathaway in the
Murphy.
third one.
Anne Hathaway in the third one, yeah, and
Yeah,
Killian
yeah.
and Killian Murphy. I mean, those movies is what started his whole relationship with Christopher Nolan. And look at how many movies he's
Oh,
been
yeah.
in,
He
collaborated
just
with
won
Christopher Nolan.
Oppenheimer. Look at
Oppenheimer,
that.
yeah, he just
Oh
did
my God.
Oppenheimer, and he just won an Oscar for that. So it,
Literally.
it goes to show just how amazing all that is. But I think that was the biggest thing too is Spider-Man. I think that love came a little bit later. I mean, obviously there was a love for it when it came out. Those movies dominated the box office, obviously, but Nolan's trilogy, I feel like, it was accepted right there and then just because of what it was and because of the
Also,
filmmaker Nolan is.
the cult appeal too, though. People in our generation will swear by it that Tobey Maguire is the only Spider-Man, the
Yes.
only true Spider-Man live adaptation. And
Hmm.
the only reason you get that is because of the competition that was upheld between Sony and then Marvel and then Disney at one
Yeah.
point. Because then you had the Andrew Garfield, and then you had the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, excuse me, and then you
Mhm.
had the Tom Holland Spider-Man, and
Yep.
you didn't really see that type of rivalry when it came to the casting of Batmans, you
No, you
know?
didn't. Because there's just been so many actors who've played Batman through the years. It's just kind of like, okay, just
Absolutely.
another retelling
That's just another retelling. Exactly.
and whatnot. So
Exactly. Same thing
yeah,
with Superman.
yeah, exactly. Same with Superman. I think same with a lot of them and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so that's really cool. But
But I just wanted to interject our episode with that answer. So, yes, Spider Man, like my Tumblr, was the winner of that
yeah,
poll. Now, to get back to what we were going to start talking about, fun facts and trivia, and I'll have Jonathan kick that off for us.
absolutely. Okay, so for fun facts about this. So the first fun fact that I have is the world's oldest business renting out copies of movies for private use was a film reel rental shop opened in Kassel, Germany. I hope I said that right. I apologize to any of our German listeners if I butchered that. By Eckhard Baum in the summer of 1975. So this was the first place
Wow.
where you could actually just go and rent something movie wise. So that's where it all started was in Germany. And
1975 in Germany.
yep,
Wow.
as wild.
50 years ago, exactly.
Yep. So we have that. And then the next fact I have is I mentioned at the beginning of the video that 20th Century Fox, now known as 20th Century Studios, loaned out 50 titles to Magnetic Video to so that could be sold to consumers. Among those titles were, but not limited to, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, MASH,
Mm,
Hello Dolly, Patton, The French Connection, The King and I, and The Sound of Music.
wow.
Yep.
Classics.
Classics, absolutely. This next one's going to deviate just a little bit and maybe even go back to our topic about VHS versus the resurgence and all that, but it ties into this one pretty well too. So on October 25th, 1976, Universal and Disney filed a lawsuit against um, Sony, and the case was known as Sony Corp of America versus Universal City Studios. The studios, Disney and Universal, tried to ban the sale of VCRs and later rental movies. They basically were trying to say, if you want our product, you must buy it. You cannot record it because it's copyright infringement, and you can't rent it because that takes the money out of our pockets. To a
Wow.
certain extent, I mean, obviously they still get a portion of that, of course, but it takes a big chunk out of their pockets. And so, the way it went was Justice Harry Blackmun decided he would side with the studios, while Justice John Paul Stevens ruled in Sony's favor. It took almost a decade to get it sorted out because on January 17th, 1984, the Supreme Court overruled the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals after Justice Sandra Day O'Connor changed her mind, leading to a 5-4 ruling with the VCR winning.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a time when they wanted to make it illegal to record a broadcast on a VCR. So that was,
Monetization.
yeah, exactly, monetization and is wild. The next one I have is in the 80s, it was common for shops to not only rent movies, but equipment, specifically VHS recorders. So there was a time you could go into a store, you could rent the tape player with what you wanted, and you could get a movie and the tape player as well. So they had rental services for that as well. My dad was telling me
Wow.
about the other night. So I thought that was really interesting. And
I think
the
you can do that too with libraries, right? You can rent, or at least you used to be able to rent a DVD player if you
back in
needed
the day,
to.
yeah, but nowadays
Yeah.
not as much, but yeah,
Yeah.
back in the day you could. And then the last one I have is Blockbuster does have one last rental store open in Bend, Oregon, which is often known as the last Blockbuster.
Wow. Let us know if you guys have visited it. That
Yes,
is
please let us
definitely a
know.
dream.
And that may actually have to be something we have to do. We may have to take a trip up there in the future and go
Let's
check it
do
out.
it.
Let's
We'll,
do
we'll
it.
do a meet and greet in Oregon.
Do a meet and greet in Oregon at the last Blockbuster. Let's do it.
Exactly. Oh, that'll be an episode to remember.
For sure, for sure. But that's all I got. What you got for me, my friend?
All right, so I'll start us off a little bit easy, and I'm sure you knew some of these, and I'm sure you guys probably know some of these too. So sit back and relax. The first video rental store opened in 1977 in Los Angeles, and it was called Video Station. I find that pretty dang cool, and it was just 2 years after the very first video rental store in Germany.
Yeah,
How cool is that? It didn't take long to get to the States, that's for sure.
absolutely.
The introduction of late fees by video rental stores was so lucrative that it became a major part of their business model. Blockbuster alone made over 800 million annually just from late fees, and this was during its peak.
Wow.
So, a little under $1 billion just because people don't know how to honor the late fee. How
Yeah.
funny is that? And that's not to mention the extra buck that they would make every time you didn't rewind your VHS tape.
Yeah.
All right, for
Absolutely.
my third fun fact, in the 1980s, VHS tapes were so popular that video rental stores often had to limit customers to just a few rentals per week due to the limited supply of new releases.
That's
This caused
wild.
some serious rental anxiety for movie lovers,
Oh, it did.
especially if you lived, like Jonathan was saying earlier, in a big family. I remember sometimes having to put a title down because we hit our limit. I have two other
Yep.
brothers and I have a mom and a dad, not
Mm-hmm.
everyone can get the movie they want that week. So
Yep.
sometimes you have to compromise when it comes to
Yep.
that.
Exactly.
And then the most rented movie of all time from Blockbuster was 1997's Titanic.
Why?
With its 3 hour
Why?
runtime, it didn't stop people from renting it over and over and
Why?
over again. I know,
Why?
because we all know how much you love that movie.
Oh, shut up. Be quiet.
So, so Blockbuster reported an average of 100,000 copies being rented each day. I'm going to say that again.
Uh,
100,000 copies of Titanic were being rented each day. How crazy is that?
I feel
I've
like you're
never heard
just
of it.
trying to. I feel like you're just trying to get to me right now. But
I know. I'm so pro Titanic. I'm just
yeah, that's another
trying to
fun fact
sway you.
about us. Ramona is a massive Titanic fan. I cannot
I'm not
stand
massive.
Titanic.
I like Titanic. I like
Yeah,
Titanic. Is
I
it my
mean,
favorite movie? No.
fair.
But do I
Okay,
like
fair.
it? Yeah.
Okay, fair.
But I
I
just like giving you a hard time because of how much you hate
Yeah, I've just never been a
it.
Titanic fan. I just can never get into it. No offense, James Cameron. I love you. You're a great filmmaker, but I'm sorry that one just didn't do it for me, man. I was boring. I couldn't sit through most of it. And I think maybe the whole love story on the ill-fated Titanic kind of took it out of me. I don't know. Maybe it was just the visuals were cool. I'll admit that, but like it just the story wise, it just kind of sucked me out of it. I'm sorry if any of you out there love Titanic and you're hoping to hear my thoughts, but I'm just not a fan.
James Cameron, Jonathan has some notes for you.
I do. Go back to making good Terminator
Good.
films. Is all I gotta say. But
Oh my God. Everything past the second, it just goes over my head. I
it
can't.
does.
I can't.
Exactly.
And for my last fun fact,
Mm.
in 1987, Blockbuster was struggling to stand out in the crowded video rental market. That all changed when they signed a deal with Warner Brothers that allowed
Wow.
them to exclusively rent out newly released VHS tapes before they hit shelves for sale. The move created a massive surge in rentals and allowed Blockbuster to grow from a handful of stores to over 2,000 nationwide. And
Wow.
this was just in the span of a couple of years, too, right after
That's
uh,
crazy.
the deal that they signed. And without said partnership, Blockbuster might not have become the empire that it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And because of that, we probably wouldn't be viewing media and entertainment in general the way that we currently do.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree. That's wild. I never knew that Warner played such a big part in Blockbuster, which is really cool.
Me too, me too. But that concludes my little fun fact section.
Wow, that's awesome. So now let's get into some trivia. I got some trivia for you. I know you got some trivia for me. So let's go ahead and
Yes.
get into it. So the first one I got for you is Um, so the first one we already kind of touched upon big time. So I'm actually gonna
Okay.
go ahead and go with my second one. So the question is, what company purchased Blockbuster in 1994? So we know the deal with Warner, but what's the company that bought them, purchased them? It's a big media conglomerate. That's your hint.
Big media conglomerate. I'm gonna. Is it Netflix?
Nope.
Wow.
It's before Netflix's time, 1994.
Oh, 94. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, okay. Okay, 94. Okay. So obviously they signed a deal with Time Warner, so it can't be Time Warner.
Nope.
Um, uh, I don't know. I'm stumped.
All right. The answer is Viacom. Viacom purchased
Viacom. Okay.
Blockbuster for $8.4 billion in 1994.
What a pretty penny. Okay.
Yeah.
So could we say that the decline started when Viacom signed on because they didn't innovate their practices?
It
So we can't
could.
fully blame Blockbuster or the original owners of Blockbuster.
I mean, I think Viacom definitely did because I mean they definitely are one of the most interesting companies. I remember that whole DirecTV thing when DirecTV didn't want to pay their crazy surcharges, they pulled all their channels from their service, which included so many like, TV Land, Nickelodeon,
Wow.
anything Paramount related. Yeah, they yanked it and they were like, yeah, you can't do that. And so I definitely think it had a little bit to do, but I think also Blockbuster definitely needed to step their game up.
True.
So yeah. And then the next one that I have is what were the four formats of home media that went through video rental stores? So when I say four formats, I'm talking like the different types, like, like DVDs and stuff like that.
Okay,
I gave you
so
one of them,
obviously
so
DVDs, obviously VHS as well.
yep.
I want to say Betamax, and I don't see Laserdisc being there, but I'm going to say Laserdiscs.
You got three of them. You got three of them. So it's
Really? What
beta,
about CDs?
VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray.
I forgot. Yep, yep. It was the ending cusp. Okay, I was thinking
Yep.
mostly the beginning of it and then just the middle of it. Okay,
Nah, you're
okay,
good.
okay.
You're good.
You're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
How
So
funny.
this one actually was going to be the first one that I was going to ask you, but we already really touched upon this. I figure it's not worth going over again, but we all know Netflix eliminated the late fees because that was the biggest thing. But what
Mhm.
else did they eliminate in that process as well? They eliminated one extra thing.
Um, they eliminated late fees, and did they also eliminate the limit that you could rent DVDs?
That is true, but think a little bit more on the same line of late fees.
Late fees. Late fees. I'm not sure.
Return dates.
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh
Netflix
my gosh.
actually eliminated the idea that you had to get it back by a certain day. I've kept Netflix DVDs for months, never got on me, never got mad at me, anything. I shipped them back. Thanks for returning. Here
Wow.
comes your next one.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I
they
mean, like a
eliminate.
library card, you can, or like a library book, excuse me,
Yeah,
those fees add up. And if
they
that
do.
Blockbuster you held on to like five DVDs for 2 weeks, that was a $50 bill
Yeah.
next time
And
you
they
went to
didn't
go rent.
charge you for that. So
Yeah.
that was
And
the other
I'm
thing they did.
I'm I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you rented like five DVDs from Netflix at the time
Yeah.
and you kept them and you wanted to rent more, did they allow you to keep renting? Because at Blockbuster, you had to return everything before you rented something else.
I think it depends. I think it depended on what was in your queue, and I think it depended on your plan as well. I can't remember. It's been so
Oh, okay.
long.
Yeah,
Uh,
I never got
so
into
long
Netflix.
since.
I was actually a late bloomer when it came to Netflix.
Yeah.
I subscribed to Netflix in like 2015. I
Okay.
was
Yeah.
a late bloomer.
Gotcha. So that was like the last era of the whole DVD mail-in thing. So
Wow.
that was the big thing. Yeah, it's crazy. But the last one I got for you here is, and I don't expect you to get this answer because I'm about to throw you a real doozy. We have not talked about this, but I just want you to give your best guess
Hit
at
me with
what
the
it is.
curveball.
So before Blockbuster became a video rental store, it had an entirely different goal in mind. What exactly was that original goal?
Can I ask a question? Did it have to
Yes,
do
you.
with movies?
No, it did not.
It didn't. Okay. Blockbuster.
Yes.
Blockbuster. Blockbuster. It sounds very Tetrisy. I want to say gaming.
No, okay,
Okay.
you're in the ballpark,
It
but
was a
no, it's
safe
not a
guess
game.
given the name. It
So
was a safe guess.
actually, okay, hopefully the people out there tried to chime in because I'm about to tell you the truth. The original goal was to, this is gonna throw you off, was to supply software services to oil and gas industries throughout Texas.
Yep. Yep. That
So
I there's no way I could have ever guessed that.
yeah, so Blockbuster never, David Cook's goal was never to make a company that went on videos, but when his wife got into the idea, he realized the opportunity, then he turned his company into Blockbuster.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now let's give a hand to Dave Cook's wife and let's give a hand to him for listening to her because she changed the game for all of us. Really.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you. And with that, I'm ready to have my brain teased as well.
Well, unfortunately mine are a lot easier and I don't
It's
have as
okay.
many as you.
It's okay.
So, this will be just more of a recap for you if you already know these.
Okay, sounds
But
good.
for the first one, what was the name of the video rental store featured in the movie Clerks, 1994 by Kevin Smith?
Oh, I have not seen Clerks in years. I think the last time I watched that was 2016. That's how long it's been since I've seen Clerks.
Any guesses?
It's unique, right? It's not like a chain like Blockbuster or Hollywood, right?
It's unique in its own way compared to those two, but I
Okay.
mean if you hear it, it sounds like a convenience store.
I yield. I'm sorry.
Quick Stop Video.
Quick Stop Video.
Quick Stop. Yeah.
Okay, I got to
Oh,
go back and
funny.
watch Clerks now.
I know we have to do a rewatch together.
Yes, we
That'd be
do.
awesome. All
Absolutely.
right. So for my second question, very easy, and you've answered it multiple times
Sure.
throughout the podcast. But which company famously disrupted the video rental industry by offering DVD rentals by mail in the early 2000s?
Oh boy, what
That's a hard
company
one.
could that be? I think that company might still actually exist today. I think they might be one of the big leaders in streaming. I think they might house my favorite show, Cobra Kai. Is it Netflix?
Ding, 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 ding. You are correct. It is Netflix.
Okay, good stuff. Good
And
stuff.
then my final question is what type of movie was most likely to be found in the new releases section of a video rental store back in the 1990s? Don't overthink this.
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time? I
Absolutely.
kind of missed the last part.
Just don't overthink it, okay?
Okay.
What type of movie was most likely to be found in the new releases section of a video rental store in the 90s?
Is it? I feel like it might be something you said.
Now,
Um,
it's general, okay? It's not like a
General.
specific title or anything. It's very general.
Oh, so
And
like
we've
a
said it
genre
sort of
or
even
a
more general, even more general than the genre.
okay, so but it's a movie like an actual title, right? It's like
So imagine you're going into a Blockbuster
yes.
and or a Hollywood video,
Okay.
and to the right or in front of you it says new releases. What movies would be in those new release sections?
I'm kind of wanting to say like Star Wars or something. Is that
Well,
correct?
technically, but what is Star Wars though? What is
Sci-fi?
technically no even more than that? What's like the theatrical term for it? Blockbuster hits.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
Blockbuster. Okay, I'm thinking of
yeah,
like movies like that broke the box office. That's what I think of a
no, yeah.
blockbuster.
I
Okay.
as general as you can get.
Okay,
So for those
blockbusters.
of you who don't know,
Mhm.
a new release section was really saved for those movies that, you know, hit the movie theater and had hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars worth of marketing, you know, those
Yes.
big names, Star
Hmm.
Wars, Harry Potter, Spider-Man. Those big movies were usually the things that you saw
Yep.
right on the shelf under the title new releases.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
wild. That's wild. That's really wild. Um,
Yeah. General as they can get. Yeah.
Goodness, yeah, for sure. But no, really
But
good
that
Q,
concludes mine.
really good fun facts and Q&A section or trivia
Yeah.
section. What am I saying? Maybe one day we'll do a Q&A. We'll see.
Hmm.
Yeah, but definitely really cool. But honestly, this is the part we have been waiting to come to. So we understand we're a little bit in with this episode, but guess what? We're gonna have some fun now. Um, we're going to talk about some memories we had from these video stores because boy, oh boy, do we have stories.
Oh, yes. Yes. If you guys know us and if you guys have been listening to us for the past couple of episodes, you guys know we love to talk nostalgia.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be a bit of a longer episode, folks, but you know what? It's not going to be as long as that last one. I can say that for sure. But you know what? Enjoy it, guys, because you may not get this again for a little while because
Yeah.
this is us unhinged at this point. So you're really gonna get to
Exactly.
see it. So if you want, even you can split up the episode. If you want to listen to the first half at one point, cool, pause it and then come back and listen to this section because you are not gonna want to miss this part. This is we're gonna have fun.
Exactly.
We're gonna have some fun. And by the way, I'm probably gonna get really hype. I apologize in advance, but this is I'm so excited for this part. I can tell you're excited too.
Oh, yeah. I've had a smile on my face the past, what, hour and a half, 2 hours that we've been
Oh, that
talking?
this has definitely been one of the best ones that
Oh,
we've done.
yeah.
But you know what's crazy about video stores? So our video store was called Video City, and you have Casa Video, right?
Yes, we do. And that's actually, it's still open.
It's still
Casa
open.
Video is still open.
That's
Yeah.
wild. That's wild. Did you have any other like mom and pops as well?
I'm sure we did, but I actually didn't delve into the mom and pop scene
Okay,
until
no
I
worries.
was, I think late high school.
Okay.
So I feel that by the time I could have started, they were probably already phasing out because of streaming and whatnot.
I gotcha.
Um, but Casa Video is definitely a place that I used to go to late in high school and early college years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Casa, yeah, that sounds like a crazy place. And you tell me that that has a bar attached to it. Like that makes me want to visit even more.
So my friend Joe and I were talking, and we have this
Yep.
feeling, and
Hmm.
obviously, if you are in any way affiliated with Casa Video, this is in no way, this is all just speculation. It's all just
Yes.
community talk.
Okay.
But we felt that because of streaming, they sort of had to um include this bar.
Hmm.
They I think they bought the building next to them, or they had already owned it, but they turned it into a bar. So it's a
Yeah.
film bar, which is actually really cool.
That is
So
sick though.
you can go in there, rent your movies, and then go to the film bar and do trivia, just drink, whatever, have a good old merry time.
That's
But
wild.
he and I were talking, and we are convinced that were it not for the addition of the bar, that Costa Video might not still be here to this day.
Yeah, I hear
So,
you.
so it does have a bar, but I think that that's usually probably what's keeping it alive right now.
Yeah, I
That's the
mean, who
hope. Well,
knows?
the hope is that it stays alive. I could be
I
totally
mean,
wrong, and people are
mhm.
renting left and right. That's the hope, but
I'm not gonna
we're
lie.
speculating that.
That's cool. I mean, that's combining two things I love, movies and beer. And so you combine those two things, I mean, hey, I'm there. So
No, me too. Me
let's
too.
do it. But no, that's cool. I can't believe that that's still open actually. And that's nuts. And from what you've shown me of Casa Video, it seems like it's not just like horror, action, sci-fi. It's like so diversified in what it
Oh,
offers.
completely,
It's wild.
completely.
You have, Universal monster horror, you have Hammer horror, you have um David Cronenberg body horror. You have those kind of
Yeah.
genres. You have action, you have thriller, you have different kinds of action like spy action. You
Mm-hmm.
have um you know mercenary act, just little things like that. It's just wild to
Absolutely.
think about, where so many stores were just so general: action,
Mm-hmm.
horror, comedy, sci-fi,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
drama, and stuff like
No,
that.
that's something that is a little bit overwhelming, but in the best way
Oh,
when
it
you go
is.
and visit a mom and pop shop or an independent movie store, or for my example, a Casa Video.
Mhm.
They basically created this community center for subgenres as well. You can go on into the second level and see an entire row dedicated to just Jackie Chan movies,
Mhm.
or even go into the back and see literally every Godzilla movie,
Yeah,
and
Godzilla
turn the
section.
corner. Yeah, turn the corner and watch French New Wave, and then
Yeah.
turn another corner and it's like live action WWE
Mhm.
recaps. And then another section, it's like Indian drama or something Bollywood, so
Yeah.
it allows for people to get their fix
Mhm.
of all these underground genres that you won't really see even on
Absolutely.
Netflix and stuff.
No, for real, it's wild to think about, and the fact of the matter is that a lot of these stores had those little diversified areas. So like Video City, for instance, it was very general, but the things that were in those areas were interesting because it's like, okay, you walk into Video City, right? And there's the checkout counter. So like let's say I'm walking in and this is my left and right, okay? So keep that in mind. So it might be a little different for y'all. So like um over here to the right, this is the checkout counter and the return area. And over to this side is where all the new releases are, so you can see them right as you walk in. And then they had a whole wall on the, I want to say the west side of the store, where they had all just new releases all the way down, and those were like the cool part about that is they had like, 100 copies of Spider-Man, 100 copies of Revenge of the Sith, 100 copies of
Whoa.
Batman Begins, which I thought was cool for a mom and pop store, which was interesting because you didn't see a whole lot of that in mom and pop
Well,
stores.
that's
Mom and pop,
expensive. To have good inventory is expensive.
yeah, it is, but you can really see how much love they put into that store.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had both DVD and VHS in the store because a lot of the stuff carried over from the VHS era, and they're like, well, we don't got anything to do with it. Why not just keep it and put it off to this side of the store?
I see.
And
I
it
see.
was it was wild, yeah. And then I remember there were just a lot of those different areas. The horror section in a mom and pop shop was a lot different. I think you might know what I'm talking about in this regard. So if you go into a
Oh yeah.
Blockbuster, you'll see horror, but it's a lot more the general stuff. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Movies like that. You go into a mom and pop horror store, that's when you start seeing titles like It Came From Beyond or Zombie Lake or something like that. You
Oh
start
yeah.
finding a lot of these cult films. Oh my gosh, zombie. Okay, so there's a movie in there. I think it's called Zombie Lake. I almost died of laughter the first time I saw the trailer for that because they played it in the store. So there were TVs that they had in there, and they would often occasionally play really cheesy horror movies. I almost lost it when I saw the trailer for that because it's so corny, it's so cheesy, and then there's this lady who goes in the lake, gets bitten by a zombie, and her whole thing is, "Oh my God, the lake!" And I'm just cracking up laughing because I'm just like, oh, that's the only line you can give her is the lake. It's like, what's so bad about the lake? You just walked in for a second. I don't see a bite on you or anything. Like, what the?
And that's not something that you would have found literally anywhere else.
No, no, absolutely. You would not find something like that anywhere else. It's just wild to think about. And obviously, and you know this as well, the mom and pop store was also the birth of Mondo movies. Those are the only places you
Ah,
could find those kind of movies. You would not find Faces of Death at Blockbuster. Always mom and pop shops. Now, the interesting part was one day when I walked in, I do remember sneaking away to the horror aisle, and in the horror aisle, that's what I'm saying, horror aisle in that area was Faces of Death. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was sitting on the shelf. And right next to it is its I don't know if I want to call it a twin because it's not really. I guess you could say I guess you could say it's I'm not going to say the word, but I think you know what I'm referring to. Basically what I'm saying is it's
are you referring to traces?
yes, I am referring to traces. I'm
Ah,
trying to I'm trying to
okay.
figure out how to I was trying to figure out how to say that
I
because
see.
I
I
didn't want to
see.
swear, but I guess the best way I can put it, and I apologize for my language, guys, but I'm gonna say it. Basically, it's bastard twin is what I call it.
Oh,
Um
that's a good way of describing it,
yeah,
actually.
that's
I
the
like
only
that.
way I can really think of describing Traces of Death. Both of which I have yes seen, but both of them were sitting there. I didn't know what they were at the time. I just thought they were some like crazy horror flicks, but I always remember on the box it specifically said, "Note, you must be 18 years of age or older to rent this, no exceptions." So that
Yeah.
was basically the whole thing. Because Mondo movies, for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to get into it really, but they're basically documentaries of like real life and they depict like bizarre, rituals, bizarre aspects of life or things that are seen as taboo to more Western society,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So, and then of course, as time went on, they became more about exploit. I mean, they've always been about exploitation, but more as time went on, it became more about the shock value rather than the artistic merit. So that's
Yeah.
basically what happened with that whole thing. But I remember seeing those. It was wild.
Yeah. I never had that experience because obviously in the formative years where I did go to video rental stores,
Mhm,
of course it was Hollywood Video and Blockbuster. So
mhm,
the only times you would really see those DVDs in my experience were when you were going to Bookman's or thrift shops. So that's
mhm.
awesome that mom and pop shops had that.
Yeah, I mean that's really where the birth of a lot of those came from, because um unfortunately Well, fortunately and unfortunately, Big Chains would not carry titles like that. It just wasn't a
Yeah,
part of their inventory,
understandably so, though.
and it doesn't cater to the family friendly image. And yeah, like you said,
No.
understandably, um, but mom and pop stores were more willing to take chances on those types of media, and whatnot. But
Well,
I
like you said earlier, they were catering to the community, and if the community
yes.
wanted that, they were gonna have it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's wild some of the stories I've heard about Faces of Death and Traces in both the video stores. I'm not going to really tell many of those stories here. Those are stories for another time, but really, really interesting. But I want to hear some stories that or some memories you got, my friend. I mean, because I feel like I've been doing a lot of the talking, but I want to hear what you remember the most. Like what stood out to you about a video store?
Um, for me, it was more of the anticipation of the weekend
Oh yeah.
and knowing that like the thing that resonates most with me when it comes to thinking about my experience at video rental stores
Yeah.
is the exciting feeling of getting out of school.
Excuse me.
I know that we had different upbringings in this way. I have two younger brothers,
Yep.
so it was this idea that we all sort of shared the same taste in movies, which was great for me. Obviously, if we shared different tastes in movies, it probably wouldn't work to my benefit. But that's basically three movies that I want to watch. Do you
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
I was anticipating going and then talking to my brothers about, okay, well, we can rent this, you rent that, and I'll rent this, and you rent that, so we can watch all three of those. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was this meticulous planning of how we were going to spend our movie times
Sure.
by planning out what we were going to get, and it's those things, it's those tiny little details in the movie experience, or in the experience of renting a movie at a video rental shop that
Yep.
I remember the most is collaborating with my brothers and being like, okay, well, I'm the only one that wants to watch Lizzie McGuire, so we won't rent that this week. I'll rent that next week by myself. But the three of us, we
Yeah.
want to watch Dragon Wars and this and that. Okay, you get that. It was
Yeah.
just planning. We were
Hmm.
curating the experience for what was to be later that night,
Oh yeah.
and it was just this like sense of familial bonding, that a lot of people don't really get, whether it's
Yeah.
with friends or with a couple or with your family, with your parents, whatever. It's just something that you don't really get in this age of streaming, and that's something
No,
that
for
I
real.
remember the most.
Absolutely. I think that's really cool, the fact that, you're going back and forth about what you want to rent. You're looking at all the different titles,
And
I
you have
don't
to
think I
compromise.
yeah. I've never heard of Dragon Wars. You brought that up a few times. What is that?
I've so it's I think it came out in 2006. It's a really bad movie, a
Okay.
really horrible,
It's one of
horrible
those.
CGI. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And as much as you saw big main titles at Blockbuster in Hollywood, you also saw B movies there too.
Yeah.
And that was one of my favorite parts about venturing over to specifically
I kind of
Blockbuster,
want to watch
is
this now.
you would get the most obscure sounding
Yeah.
titles, and you'd think, okay, I'm gonna go watch that. My brothers and I, we sort of strayed away from new releases because my mom is a cinephile, so
Yeah.
chances are we had already seen it in the theater. So we delved more into like those B horror or B
Yeah.
comedy, B anything B movie, anything
Yeah.
that
B
is
movies are
lower
fun
budget.
sometimes.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I would rent movies like Dragon Wars, Mr. Jingles, just a bunch of really obscure
Mr.
titles
Jingles.
that no one has ever heard of, and the only way that you could watch them is by renting them, and that's what we did. We would pick really obscure horror or obscure comedy and take it home and watch it with us, or watch a movie that my mom didn't want to watch in the movie theater,
Hmm.
and that's what we would watch. Most of the time, at least the Blockbuster that I ventured to, they also sold movies there too. They
Hmm.
sold new releases. So usually, if we watched it in the movie theater and we liked it, we wouldn't rent it again. We would just buy it and then rent other movies. So my experience was definitely delving into the lesser known titles rather
Yeah.
than going straight to the new releases section.
And that was cool about mom and pop stores because they offered a lot more of those B selections. But like you said,
Yeah.
Blockbuster in Hollywood, they had them as well.
They had
But
some, yeah.
they
No,
had
nowhere
some,
near as much.
but the mom and pops were really pushing those B movies. Yeah, I remember
They really were.
there was one in Hollywood Video, and oh my God, the movie was terrible. I watched it years later. The title of the film, you're gonna crack up when you hear this. It's called Sick, but it's spelled S.I.C.K. It's just called Sick, and I'm like, okay, what's this supposed to be about? And there's a clown on the front of the packaging. And so I'm like, okay, this is a clown horror movie, but it literally, Sick has nothing to do with it. It's an acronym for Serial Insane Clown Killer. That's the title of the movie.
That's hilarious. I love that's
That's
something I
the
would
t
have loved.
that's the title of the movie. It's literally about these people camping, and then this clown killer starts stalking them and all this other stuff, and it's so bad. It's worse than The Room. It's worse than The Room. And I'm
Tommy
willing to
was
say that.
so
Yeah, it's way worse. Tommy
oh
Wiseau
my
could have
god.
done a much better job than what
That's
these
funny.
people did. I mean, there's literally one part in that movie where it's like it's so stupid. The actors are stupid. The characters are stupid. The killer is the stupidest one of them all. It's ridiculous. But I remember seeing that in Hollywood, and then I went and watched it later. And I'm just like, this is what I was afraid of when I was a kid.
That's
Like,
funny.
yeah, it was
That's
wild.
funny.
But some other titles in those stores were always interesting too. Because I remember even in when Video City was going out of business, they allowed you to go in and purchase whatever you wanted at your own leisure. And
Oh,
the most fun we had was just literally trying to buy all the stuff we wanted off the rack before it was gone. So that's
oh
how I
yeah.
got a lot of videotapes as well and whatnot. And toward the end, Video City started getting video games, and I remember a couple of the video games I ended up renting from there were Godfather the video game. Um, you know,
Really? Okay.
yeah, but again, that was, once I realized what it was, I took it back. It wasn't. I mean, I love the game now, but like, when I was younger, let's just say, didn't really know what was going on. And I'm sorry,
That's
mom and
fair.
dad, they actually don't know about this story, but I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't ask me how I was able to get my hands on that, but it was for the Wii, and it was garbage.
That's so funny. I remember I think it was back
Well,
when GameStop was
Godfather the game
relevant.
wasn't garbage. Let me specify on that. Sorry. Godfather the game wasn't garbage. Playing it on the Wii was garbage. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. Please continue.
Well, almost anything on the Wii that was either centered around violence or anything
It wasn't fun.
other than Wii Sports, it just was not fun. I'm sorry. Get a PlayStation or an Xbox for that.
Yeah.
I never rented video games from Blockbuster in the last like year that they started
Oh,
doing
okay.
it
Hmm.
because I at the time I didn't have a console that matched all the newer
Hmm.
releases, so it was just something that I would walk by and be curious about, but could never really partake in given my lack of accessibility to a gaming console.
Yeah.
But the movies themselves, I remember leaving school, like my mom picking me up, and then us asking, "Oh, what are we going to be doing today?" And she would say, "Oh, well, we're going to run some errands and then we'll stop by." And I know you said Pizza Hut, but for my family, it was Peter Piper Pizza,
Oh,
which
okay.
I don't know if it's specifically a West Coast thing, but they have many of these chains here in Arizona. I think they're actually closing down. But there was one right next to the Blockbuster by my house. So we would actually, it was in the same plaza.
Hmm.
So we would go run the errands at the
Yeah.
Albertsons, which shared that plaza.
Yeah.
And then we'd go over to order the pizza,
Mhm.
run over to the Blockbuster, choose our movies, and by the time the pizza was done, pick up the pizza and go.
Wow.
Yep.
That's dope. So actually Hollywood Video here in Flag was over by an Albertsons that was here as well, which I thought was interesting as well. So
And
Um,
Albertsons, how convenient,
yeah, right.
or what a
Exactly.
coincidence.
And then there's a Starbucks on the end of that too. There was a Starbucks there on the end of it too. So it
Oh, how
was,
funny. There was
yeah,
a
it was,
Starbucks, but in that same parking lot. I
yeah.
wonder if the people who sell all the rights to buy these franchises, if they force you, okay, you're opening Albertsons, okay, it has to have a Starbucks, it has to have a this, it has to have a that.
Yeah, it's wild, but yeah.
Yeah,
So real quick,
tangent. Sorry.
another massive memory of mine. And again, I apologize to my folks. They don't really know about this story, but I'm gonna tell this story here on the podcast.
You're an
And
adult. You don't have to apologize.
I know, but again, I know they're gonna be listening to this and they're gonna be like, "What were you doing?" Like,
Okay, that's fair. That's
and
fair.
whatnot. So I apologize in advance. And also, this story is gonna be a little bit PG-13, so I'm issuing this now.
Self-incriminating.
Yeah, so I'm just letting y'all know we're gonna take it up a little bit of a notch, but I have to share this story just because it was so big in my rental store memory. So before we get this story started, I'm sure the majority of people listening to this episode, if they grew up with a mom and pop store, and I'm sure you know this, Ramona, almost every mom and pop store had an adults only section.
Oh
Yes.
gosh. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
excited for this story now.
So
That's all you had to say.
yeah, before people are saying no, I did not go in there. I was not looking around at stuff. I promise I was pure in that regard, but basically, here's what happened. So, at Video City, one of the most interesting parts of this whole experience was you had to, if you wanted access to that room, you had to give every bit of your dignity to it and go to the counter and ask them to unlock that room for you. So
Give
you
your ID.
basically, yeah, you basically had to go to the counter and say, "Hey, I want to rent some." Yeah, it's kind of like you had to go to the counter and basically incriminate yourself that you wanted access to that place. You also had to do it for new releases as well. So here's the thing. The new release wall, little side story, the new release wall had the movies, but the cases were empty. You had to take that
Yeah.
case to the front and then they
Hmm.
would get the movie for you because they wanted to eliminate people fighting over movies. Video City had
That,
an
but also
in
people stole.
Yeah, and people
People
stole. And
stole all
Video
the
City
time.
had a bad incident with people who got in a fist fight over Revenge of the Sith. Take that,
No
Star Wars fans.
way.
Yeah, I remember because I was getting dropped off for karate one day, and I think it was Revenge of the Sith. I can't remember for sure, but one of those, and the police are there, and then I go in there after the whole incident's done, after my karate lesson, and I'm like, "Yo, what's going on with the police?" And they said, "Yo, somebody got in a fight over a new release." I'm like, "What?" I'm just like, I'm like, "What?"
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, so then after that point, they're like, no, we're keeping him behind the counter. Like we don't need people stealing or fighting over stuff. So, but anyways, back
No,
onto the
that
main
makes
part of
sense.
my story. So basically what ended up happening was one day I'm searching and lo and behold, of all the sections they can put by that door, it is comedy. And I loved comedies growing up. So they stick the comedy section right there.
Oh
And then
my
guess what's
gosh.
adjacent to that area too? And you are gonna absolutely love this.
The
The
children's
children's
section.
section. Come on, Video City. Like you couldn't have put that on the other side of the store. Like you had to put it near the holy grail of all mom and pop video stores. Like, come on, you know?
That's so funny though,
I'm like,
because everything is intentional. I know for a fact that they knew what they were doing.
I don't know, man. It was so weird, but okay, I was browsing comedies and I hear and it was a
Allegedly.
oh hey I swear I was browsing comedies. So what ended up happening was I'm browsing comedies. The store was quiet. It was dead quiet because not it was I think it was a week. I think it was a weekday, so not many people were in the store. But this old dude walks in, m- gray hair,
Gross.
wrinkles, all these things,
Oh my gosh.
and I couldn't hear what he said, but he had one of those. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm not. I can't make this up either. This is exactly what was going on. I can't like. And all of a sudden I couldn't hear what he said, but I see a store employee. Oh yeah, come with me. And they're used to it at this point, to
Yep.
where they're not gonna be like, oh yeah, that room. There's like, oh yeah, of course, follow me, sir. And then they grab the key, and they had keys for that and for the bathrooms as well. So
Oh, okay.
originally I'm like, oh, he just probably needs to go to the bathroom. But he's walking my way and he's walking up toward that area because you had to walk all the way to the end, walk straight to the back, and the door was right there that said adults only. Please ask at the front to be let in.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the thing is, it locked from the outside, but it didn't lock from the inside. So you could leave at free will, but obviously you
Okay.
couldn't just walk straight in. The guy unlocks the door, and for about maybe a split second to two, I get a glimpse of what that room looks like. The door opens. There is a couch
I was
in the
about to ask. It's
middle.
there's usually a couch.
There's a
Yep.
couch in the middle of that room. There's a bunch of DVDs galore. I didn't see anything really sensitive, but of course I saw lots of women, lots of, very stuff. And I'm just like, okay, this is interesting. And the thing is, more than one person could be in that room at a time.
Yep. Yep.
So when I'm looking, I'm just like, what did I just witness? I'm like,
Well,
I'm a man now.
I was in the children's section, but now I am a man.
Yeah, exactly. And then eventually they did modify the store and they moved that section to the other
I
side.
see.
So
Okay, I mean
yeah.
that logically that makes the most sense, especially when it comes to family sensitivities and whatnot. So
Oh my
that makes
gosh.
sense.
But yeah, so
Oh my
and
gosh.
whatnot. I just always thought it was embarrassing. Like you always had to go up and give up what little dignity you had to basically say, "Hey, I'm a degenerate. I want to be let into that room."
Well, I mean, rental
Not shaming
stores,
anyone. I'm just saying.
rental stores sort of created uh this desire for some people it's voyeurism, for other people it's just access to it prior to the internet.
Yeah.
It allowed for these sections
Oh yeah.
to exist, and they also allowed for independent rental shops specifically for that to also exist. I know here in Tucson on 22nd and Craycroft there is a pretty much it's called the Adult House or something like that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a place that sells and rents DVDs that are explicit
Yeah.
in the sexual realm.
Sure.
And I can't remember if I've been in there. I feel like at 18 I probably like browsed and like
Oh
tried to
snap.
go in. I can't remember. It was either that or it was a Google search, but I do know that they have in the back, or at least they had
A
sort
booth.
of think of like a voting booth
I know
with the
exactly what
curtains.
you're alluding. I know exactly where you're going
Yeah,
with this.
and they had these stalls in the back so that you could get your business done. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna browse and people are gonna go do their thing, and I'm browsing, and it's something that you can't get with streaming, even with the
Wow.
internet. It's so funny. It's so funny.
Wow.
Humans
Hi,
are
my
so
name is
funny.
John Cody. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, seriously, seriously. Um, but I know for a fact that the closest thing to those types of movies that Blockbuster, at least the one by my house, made available to the public, were NC-17 movies. Now, a
Yes.
lot of places didn't have these available, but the Blockbuster near my house had NC-17 movies,
Yeah.
and that's where you were able to see movies like the movie Bruno,
Yeah.
or
Showgirls.
I've never seen Showgirls. I didn't know that was NC-17.
Yeah,
That was pretty
Showgirls
cool.
is NC-17. Lust
Yeah, yeah.
Caution is NC-17.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a bunch of NC-17 movies. A lot of them are
Right?
more on that side of
Yeah.
things, but when we talk NC-17,
Jackass was one,
are you sure
or was it
Jackass was
R?
17? I thought it
I
was
no, I
R.
think I think it's not rated. I think it says not rated at the bottom.
Interesting. I know a
Um,
lot of the newer Jackass films, those are rated R because now they
yeah,
can get
those are
away with an R rating. But
well,
okay,
some of them are. I think they might have an R release, but they also have a not rated, which is similar to the NC-17, which usually means that there's graphic nudity in it. And
okay,
some of the Jackass movies did in fact have
okay, you're right.
graphic nudity.
Mhm.
Um, I'm specifically thinking about the staple scene in one of the
Oh no, don't bring that up
movies.
again. No, no.
Oh my
Why do you have to
gosh, but
do that? I have pain already.
I know, right? But yeah, that was really the only experience that you got when it came to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. It was very,
Yeah,
mainstream
they were very
NC-17.
mainstream, very family friendly. It was only
Yeah.
the mom and pop stores that really had those kind of sections. And again,
Yeah.
it's all about community.
Yeah. And I mentioned that I wanted to touch upon a story about my sort of
Oh
first
boy.
interaction with movies like that.
Oh boy.
Um at
Let's okay, go for it. I got to hear this
so
now.
I was born and raised in Tucson,
Yeah, yeah.
moved to Flagstaff for a little bit. So
Yep.
I came when I moved back to Tucson, I went back to see if it still existed, and it does. So
Oh boy.
at the Tucson swap meet, there is a tent that is dedicated to everything media. So
Okay.
you have video games, you have, well, except for books, you
Mhm.
have video games of every console pretty much. You have
Excuse me.
movies, DVDs, VHSs,
Yep.
everything. And they're
Wow.
all in just cardboard boxes with Sharpie labeled horror,
Yeah.
this, that, so it's a
That's
media
dope.
lover's dream.
Okay.
And in the very back, it's a tent. You
Adults
can see
only?
everything.
Yeah.
Adults only. It's
Uh,
it's not like they're divided into rooms. It's one big tent with boxes on tables, and every box is labeled individually.
mhm.
And the entire row of the back tent, triple X, triple X, triple X, triple X.
Damn.
And I'm thinking, what does that mean? Because at the same time, the Vin Diesel Triple X movie had just come out. So I was like,
No.
why do they have a bunch of copies of Triple X? So I'm just gonna go look. The closer you get, they actually have small posters by the boxes to sort of deter people from coming back over there.
Okay, okay.
And my brothers and I were looking and we're like, oh, we know exactly what
You
these
got
are. These are
curious.
booby flicks. These are
Yeah.
these are girls.
Oh, let's
So my
go.
brothers and I were just curious and like tried to maneuver through the maze of boxes so that we
Yeah.
wouldn't get noticed by the attendant. And we just started sifting through them. And you had boxes like regular DVD boxes, and then you had those rip off DVDs that are like that
Oh
thin,
yeah,
that the
yeah,
boxes
yeah,
are
yeah.
that
Yeah,
thin.
yeah, yeah.
Just, I would say at least 400. And I know that's a random number, but there
That's
were at least
wild.
400. And there are boxes and boxes. Like there were more boxes that said triple X than any of the other genres. And to me, that blew my mind. And that was pretty much the first time that I encountered one physically like that. It was really
So
crazy. And I
I
was, I
gotta
think, like 8.
I gotta ask now, how old were you when this happened? I'm just curious. I'm not trying
I think 8. I think 8 or 9. Yeah.
Yo, and I
I was
thought I was
super young.
crazy, yo.
Well, when
Oh
you have
man.
little brothers and you guys all think alike, it just fuels your
I
fire
mean,
more
hey,
and it gives you more
exactly.
confidence.
You got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? Hey, I mean, let's be real. If it wasn't for that locked door, I probably would have done the same thing. Not gonna lie.
Well, a child's curiosity, especially when you come from either a family or a community. In my case, I grew up Catholic, so
Hmm.
things like that were never talked about. So
Hmm.
the only way that you could be introduced to that is by stumbling upon it
Hmm.
or by looking it up. And at the
Hmm.
time, we didn't have a computer. So the next best thing was to be curious and look at those DVD cases and see
Wow.
the explicit imagery and all that. Sometimes the
That's
only access
wild.
to knowledge you have is happenstance.
That's wild.
Happenstance. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's funny though. No, that's crazy though. I mean, like, hey, I You know, it was a part of the video store, and like regardless of, even if you didn't go through
Yeah.
that section, you had to know it was there because I mean, it's
Oh
written
yeah.
in big neon letters, adults
No,
only.
yeah.
And
I'm sure
sometimes
that there were families that like, made their kids close their eyes while walking past it or
yeah,
something.
because like not every store was that good at concealing it either. I've seen pictures where it's just like a freaking curtain in front of it
Yep.
that says adults only. You
Hmm.
can easily see on the side what's back in that section. Some of them
Yep.
have those old school bar doors, like when you go into
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
to like like a saloon, back in the day, the
Yep.
John Wayne style of those. It's
Yep.
like, and then you walk in, and then the next thing you know, and but like you can see top and bottom, what's
Oh
back
my
there. And
gosh.
it's
Oh
just
my
wild to
gosh.
think that some people just didn't take that amount of care for
Yeah.
it. And it's wild, like I said, but it creates good memories. It's interesting to think just how nostalgic video stores are, but in the sense of the wording, in the fact that not only does it take us back to an experience we lived, but for me, it also took me back to an experience I wish I lived because I wish I lived in the peak of it, really,
Oh yeah.
Because you and
Oh
me
yeah.
really came in the last leg era
We
of it,
did.
and whatnot. And so we got to experience just the last little taste of it. But can you imagine, like, and again, I'm not saying I wish I could have lived in another era, but can you imagine if we were around during the height and the boom of
Oh my
when
gosh.
Blockbuster was the giant of rental stores?
Yeah, like I'm trying to picture a day in the life of my mom, and my mom was born in 72. She's pretty young
Okay,
when it comes to our parents' generation.
sure.
So I assume she grew up in Tucson, so I assume probably like a Friday night to her looked like leaving school, and then there was a really big thing during this time of movie watching too, called cruising, that our parents used to do all the time.
Okay.
And it's literally just that, where they get into their car
Mhm.
with friends by themselves, turn on some music, and then
Yeah.
just drive. And I picture my mom's Friday night being that, and then driving to grab some pizza, then driving to a
Yeah.
video rental shop, and then just
Yeah.
spending time there. Whether or not she actually did that, I have no idea. But if I were her at the
That's what you be
time,
doing.
that's what I'd be doing. I'd be
Same.
cruising, and then cruising to the Blockbuster or whatever, and then grabbing a pizza and going back home.
Yeah, that's really cool, to think in that regard, with all that kind of thing. And one thing I want to touch upon real quick before we start wrapping it up too is another place that's kind of keeping this trend going is libraries. Funny enough,
Yeah,
because
for
a lot
sure.
of a lot of people I know talk about the idea of the library because libraries, a lot of times people know libraries for loaning books and loaning things, but even
Hmm.
in the 70s and 80s, they started loaning out, videotapes because my library was loaning tapes out for a while. And sometimes
Yeah,
people might have even saw that as a better alternative because now you don't have to pay a fee. You just show your library card, you can
yeah.
rent movies, and then you're going home and you don't pay anything for it.
Well, it allowed the playing field to be completely equal. I mean, you
Hmm.
didn't have to have even a single dollar to go watch the movie you wanted to watch. I
Hmm.
still rent movies from the library or borrow movies from the library. I borrow
Likewise.
comic books from the library.
Likewise. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, the fact of the matter is that, when you go into a Blockbuster or a Hollywood video, they have more of the mainstream. They have a lot of the newer stuff. Libraries often don't get new releases for quite some time, and they even say
Unless
we're
it's donation based, yeah.
unless it's donation based. Yeah, they're very much like, hey, it's going to take us time to get this movie up in here. Like we are
Yeah.
not a video rental place. Yes, we have movies you can check out, but like we're not going to have the newest thing, and that's where I think Blockbuster and Hollywood came in too, because people probably wonder, well, if you had libraries, then what's the need for these stores? Well, because the stores catered to the people that were just movie fans, and also a lot of the people working and were movie fans themselves. They knew what you were talking
Yeah.
about. You could go in, like I remember when I first walked into Hollywood Video, my parents wanted to rent Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon. They went in, they asked for the movie, and the guy knew exactly what he wanted, took him right to the area, gave him the movie, bam, like that.
Yeah.
You go into a
Yeah.
library, you're gonna be getting. I'm sorry, what's that movie called again? Okay, this and this. Okay. I think it's in section A4, and you're going, A4? What are you talking about? You know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whatnot.
Also,
So
the selection, though, too. At a Blockbuster, you'll have, like you were saying, 100 copies of Spider-Man, whereas a library might only have one,
exactly.
if they
And
even have it.
it reminds me of that Arthur episode where Arthur loses the library book and it's a new release of a Scare Your
He
Pants
thinks
Off
he's
book
gonna go
and
to jail.
he thinks he's gonna go to jail, but the funny part is that when it's a new release of a book, that's when libraries will stock up. But yet
Oh
there's
yeah.
only one copy of that, and there's like a million kids in line, and I'm like, why are you all in line if you know there's only one copy? It's gonna
Yeah.
go to the person who's
Yeah.
at the front of the line
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like and whatnot. But it was fun because I remember Harry Potter even like the library got at least 4 or 5 copies of Deathly Hallows when that first came out, you know?
Oh
I mean, now
yeah.
they only I think have one or two, but that's how many they got because of how popular Harry Potter was at the time.
Wow.
And it's crazy to think that even with the movie realm, I remember Hollywood Video one night had a line around it when Harry Potter, Harry Potter and
Talk
the
about obscure titles.
yeah, Harry Cotter, yeah. Harry Potter and the I think it was it I think it was either because I think by the time Deathly Hallows Part 1 came out, the stores were kind of fading. I want to
Yeah,
say
that was like
I think it
2011,
was Goblet of
2012.
Fire. I think it was Goblet of Fire or Order of the
Okay.
Phoenix, one of those two. When that
Okay.
came out, there was a line literally outside of Hollywood Video. They had a whole wall behind it. And I remember I never watched Harry Potter really when I was young. It was just one of those things. I got into it later in life, but I
Okay.
remember all of a sudden I was going in to rent something else, and the store had told them that we had sold out of all our copies
Wow.
of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And I remember I didn't hear the announcement, but I saw a bunch of kids just walking away in tears. I'm like,
Oh
what
yeah.
was this? I'm like confused. I'm like, what exactly just happened? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden the guy at the front's like, I'm just looking. And I was cool with some of those people. And I just asked him, I go, I gotta ask you real quick. I said, what just happened? He goes, oh, we ran out of copies of Order of the Phoenix. I'm like, oh, that sucks. But like to me, because I didn't watch any of those, I was just like, oh, that's too bad. And then I went to go look for
Mm,
whatever I wanted after that.
gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
Hollywood Video also had another place that was attached to it made straight for games. Do you remember Game Crazy?
Game crazy. Game crazy. I
Game
think,
Crazy.
yeah, yeah. I think I do. I
Yeah,
think I have big memories of it,
they were all
possibly.
just video games, and it was attached to Hollywood
Wow.
Video, and it was right next door. So that means while your folks were shopping for movies, you could be in browsing for video games or playing video games on the little kiosks.
So the Hollywood Video that I went to, which in
Hmm.
Tucson, if you're listening and you're
Hmm.
familiar with Tucson, it used to be on, well, one of them. The one that I used to go to was on 22nd and Craycroft, too, actually across the street from that
Hmm.
adult video store. And it did not have the game crazy game,
Game
or
Crazy.
what is it? Game crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it did
not
not
all of them
have
had
that,
one.
but I'm sure at least one location here in Tucson did have that at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, we had a Game Crazy up here, and that was fun. I mean, I remember going in there. I had a friend of mine, who often frequented Game Crazy, and we would just be in there for hours sometimes because they would change the games for
Mm,
us and whatnot. I always like to try
mm.
and sweet talk the people into putting Halo in. They were always so reluctant, but I remember always trying to
That's
sweet
funny.
talk them and see if they would let me play Halo. So yeah,
I'm glad that you brought
whatnot.
up Harry Potter because it reminds me, I think in episode 2 or 3, it
Hmm.
might have been episode 3. I had mentioned that I didn't remember the first VHS that I had
Yeah.
or I had purchased. And actually, right after we filmed that, I remembered for some reason. And it was actually Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the VHS. I
Oh,
got it
okay.
from Hollywood Video when it came out.
Wow.
And that just reminded me of that. So I just wanted to
That's
clarify
awesome.
for those of you who do know what I'm talking about. I do know what movie I got first,
I
and it was
appreciate it. Thank
Harry
you.
Potter and the Chamber of
Thank you so
Secrets.
much. But honestly, with all of that, I think I've covered everything. We talked about our memories. We talked about a lot of fun stuff that was in those stores and whatnot. So I don't know, unless you have anything to add, I think I'm good.
For some reason, my memory has escaped me from every detailed memory I have on video store. So I think
You're
I've
good.
covered everything that I want to share.
For sure. And I obviously, was throwing it kind of back and forth to make sure, you had a little time too, because sometimes I get bored of hearing myself. And I think you guys know when it comes to the amount of the podcasts that we've done, I've only actually listened to a couple of them. And I usually only listen to them when we're going through it editing. And then after that, I'm just like, enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but no, really good stuff. I think this was a really good episode. I think it's really special to think about these memories, and obviously we went a little bit longer than probably you guys anticipated, but guess what? We love to talk. We're here for the conversation, and we know you guys are too. So we know and hope you understand. But the best part
Well,
about
that's
this
that's the
is,
point of the podcast, though. They're
well, of
they're
course,
list
but
they're
well,
freely listening,
of
wanting to listen to
course,
us talk.
of course, my friend, but you get what I'm saying, right? I'm thinking about everyone. I'm thinking about all of our listeners out there. But to tell you the truth, it's been a pleasure, and I really love doing this with you, and I think this is just one of the best ways that we can get to relive a lot of our past, and I
Absolutely. And then just share with you guys parts of us, and hopefully you guys share with us parts of your lived experience too.
Absolutely. So, with that, folks, I'll go ahead and take us out. I just want to say thank you all for listening to this episode. You guys are the best. We thank you all for participating in our poll with Batman. I know there's been some things in the last few episodes where we've said we're gonna put some stuff on the Instagram for you guys. Just know it is coming. Obviously both me and Ramona, we both have day jobs still. We're both trying to do our stuff. And this is a fraction of what we do. We hope one day it can be fully what we do, but
Yeah,
it's definitely a fraction right now. And so please bear with us. We are doing everything we can, but we will get it up. We will make sure you guys know what we're talking about and whatnot. But you know what? Just gotta say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Thank you for staying and listening as long as you have. Make sure to listen wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple, we are on Amazon,
Audible.
we're on Audible, we're on Amazon Music, we're on Deezer, we're on so many forms of podcasting. So please, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to give us a follow and give us a like and give us some ratings as well, because it really helps us out in getting this podcast out to as many people as you can. For our YouTube watchers, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Make sure you go like, comment, rate, and subscribe, and make sure to hit that little bell and to get all the notifications on what we're doing, new episodes of the podcast, videos that we may be posting in the future. The possibilities are endless. So make sure that you are subscribed and you have that bell turned on so you can be notified when that happens. Same on your podcast forms, because we probably will be announcing things. And make sure to go follow us on the Instagram, Rewind Room Podcast. At Rewind Room Podcast is the name of our email. And also, if you have nostalgic memories you'd like to share with us and you have stuff that you'd like to do it, send us a DM or email us at rewindroompodcast@gmail.com. You guys are awesome. We thank you so much for joining us on another episode again. My name is John.
And I'm Ramona.
And we will catch you all on the rewind. Take care and have a blessed day, everyone.